Chapter 326. Have you thought about the consequences of your actions? Jinchan asked. No matter what the consequences are, I will save Chico. Yi Fan's answer was filled with determination. Fan Air, you must not act rashly. Yi Yun said to Yi Fan. If you really do this, you can't turn back. Child, calm down. Jinchan said as she walked in front of Yi Fan. Your grandfather is right. If you really do this, you will fall into Matsumoto Takayoshi's trap. Even if you don't agree, he won't dare to do anything to Chico's soul. Although Chico's soul is his bargaining chip to blackmail you, it is also his life-saving straw. He definitely won't lightly touch Chico. You must think carefully. Don't be impulsive and make a big mistake. Then what should I do now? Yi Fan said to Jinchan. Should I just look on and ignore Chico? That evil cauldron is filled with thousands of demons and ghosts. How can Chico have a good time in there? That Matsumoto Takayoshi is sinister and cunning. If I don't agree to his request, what if he attacks Chico's soul? Fan Air, do you know the consequences of your actions? Yi Yun said to Yi Fan with a frown. If you help Matsumoto Takayoshi find the 9 cauldrons and help him seize the Great Ming Dynasty, you will become the enemy of the entire Great Ming Dynasty and even the entire world. Have you thought about the consequences? Great Ming Dynasty? Humph. Yi Fan laughed coldly. Grandfather, what has the Great Ming Dynasty done to our Yi? Yi Yun was stunned. Our Yi family has been loyal for generations. But what happened in the end? Yi Fan walked in front of Yi Yun and stared at Yi Yun. You set him up, removed him from his position, seized his title, and put him on the wanted list. You ruined the reputation of the entire Yi family, causing them to be exiled to a foreign country. If it wasn't for that dog of an emperor who was corrupt, incompetent, and licentious beyond measure, would he, Matsumoto Takayoshi, dare to covet the Great Ming Dynasty? How did our Yi clan end up in such a state? We don't need such a Great Ming Dynasty. Yi Yun was stunned by Yi Fan's words and couldn't say a word. Fan Air, calm down. Don't be impulsive and act recklessly. Jinchan said to Yi Fan, the Great Ming Dynasty indeed owes your Yi family, but no matter what, you can't help an outsider take over the Great Ming Dynasty. Outsiders? Recklessness? Yi Fan turned around and looked at Jinchan. Granny, let me ask you. When Qin Shi Huang unified the 6 countries, which one was an outsider? China has stood strong for thousands of years, and there are dozens of different races. Which one was an outsider? This. Jinchan was at a loss for words. Winner takes all, that's all. It doesn't matter who becomes the emperor, as long as the people live and work in peace. So what if an outsider becomes the emperor? Wasn't the Great Yuan dynasty, which was just destroyed by the Great Ming dynasty, also an outsider? Yi Fan said, as for you saying that I'm reckless, I want to ask you something. If it was grandfather's soul that was locked in the soul-gathering evil cauldron, what would you do? This. Jinchan lowered her head and frowned. She couldn't answer Yi Fan's question. Grandfather, Yi Fan turned around and looked at Yi Yun. If it was Granny's soul that was locked in the soul-gathering evil cauldron, what would you do? Yi Yun was silent. As long as I can save Chico from the cauldron, so what if I go against the Great Ming Dynasty? So what if I go against the whole world? As Yi Fan spoke, he once again came to Fujiwara no Chico's side. He bent down and looked at his beloved wife tenderly. Fan Air, what you said does sound somewhat reasonable. Yi Yun came behind Yi Fan. But have you thought about it? If Matsumoto Takayoshi sat on the Great Ming Dynasty's throne, would he be a good emperor? Just for a wondrous spell Muramasa, he planned to kill Chico's father. Do you think he has the qualifications to be an emperor? After Yi Fan heard Yi Yun's words, he frowned and didn't say anything. If he becomes an emperor with his warlike personality, he will definitely go on a large-scale campaign and kill without end. At that time, the common people will truly have no way to make a living and the people will be in a terrible situation. Yi Yun continued, in order to save your wife, you don't care about the lives of millions of people. Do you think it's fair for you to do this? Yi Yun's words left Yi Fan speechless. Grandfather is right, Yi Fan thought. If he helped Matsumoto Takeyoshi take over the great Ming dynasty, it would definitely cause chaos and corpses would be everywhere. The true culprit of this matter wasn't Matsumoto Takeyoshi, but himself. But if he didn't do this, what would happen to Chiko? His beloved wife didn't do anything wrong, so why should she suffer this kind of calamity? Why? Yi Fan's head started to hurt. He closed his eyes and raised his head. He painfully pinched the space between his eyebrows, not knowing what he should do. Child, Granny understands how you're feeling right now. I know that you're in a lot of pain. Jin-chan looked lovingly at Yi Fan. How about this, your grandfather and I won't try to persuade you anymore. Don't you still have 3 days? You must be tired during this period of time. In these 3 days you should go out with Xiao Zhao and relax. You can calm down and think about it. After hearing Jin-chan's words, Yi Fan slowly opened his eyes. Jin-chan was right. He had been too tired during this period of time. After his beloved wife's soul had been taken away by the Incheon Dacheong, he had healed his internal injuries, practiced his martial arts, traveled to the East Sea, avenged his wife, traveled to the East Sea, searched for the evil cauldron, traveled to the North Pole, searched for immortal herbs, found an ice snake and turned it into an inner core. He hadn't had a good night's sleep during this period of time. He really wanted to rest, but he couldn't. His beloved wife's soul was trapped in the evil cauldron. How could he sleep well? As Yi Fan thought about this, he turned back to look at Fujiwara no Chiko, who was lying on the wooden bed. Don't worry. Jin-chan could tell what Yi Fan was thinking. Chiko's 7 souls have returned to her body. Although she can't speak, she's still alive. You can't do anything in these 3 days. Just go out with Xiao Zhao and calm down and think about it. I've already forged Mingyu's sword. Originally, I was planning to go to the Purple Sun Temple myself. Since you're free and fast, you can deliver the sword for me. You and Xiao Zhao can also go to the Purple Sun Temple to relax. As Yi Yun spoke, he picked up a long yellow cloth bag from the table and handed it to Yi Fan. Yi Fan took the sword that Yi Yun handed to him. Only then did he remember that he had promised to deliver the sword to the little Taoist boy. At the mention of the sword, Yi Fan suddenly remembered the little Taoist boy's ability to predict the future. Since he could predict the future, why not ask him? Maybe he could think of a better idea. A glimmer of hope lit up in Yi Fan's heart. Popo. Yi Fan said to Yi Yun and Jin-chan, I will go to the Purple Sun Temple with Xiao Zhao to deliver the sword. Please take care of Chiko. Jin-chan stilled at first and then smiled. Don't worry. Leave Chiko to me. She had thought that Yi Fan would not agree. Grandfather. Yi Fan said to Yi Yun, what is the name of this sword? He had promised the little Taoist boy that Yi Yun would give this sword a good name. Vanishing Shadow. Yi Yun said. Grandfather, I will remember. Yi Fan said to Yi Yun, rest at Popo's place. I will leave first. Okay, be careful. Yi Yun reminded Yi Fan. Yi Fan nodded and then said to Baihu in Jin-chan's arms, Xiao Zhao, we should go. Baihu jumped onto Yi Fan's shoulder. Popo, grandfather, take care. Fan Air is leaving. Yi Fan said as he activated his movement technique and slowly floated off the ground. Then, he turned into a shadow and disappeared. I haven't seen him for a few months and his cultivation has reached such a level. Yi Yun exclaimed as he watched Yi Fan disappear. This child is too stubborn. I really don't know if it will be a blessing or a curse in the future. Jin-chan sighed. Chapter 327. An hour later. Purple Yang Temple. Yi Fan, who was in the air, slowly withdrew his spiritual power and landed at the entrance of Purple Sun Temple. After coming out of Pear Blossom Palace, He first returned to Lingyun Cave to take a bath and change into a clean set of clothes. Purple Yang Temple was an important place of Taoism. If he entered the temple covered in blood, it would be disrespectful to Taoism. It was already evening and the sky was gradually darkening. The Taoists in Purple Yang Temple were doing their evening classes. Creak. Sure enough, as Yi Fan expected, the moment his figure landed on the ground, the door of the Purple Sun Temple opened a crack. The little Taoist child's mischievous, smiling face appeared from the crack. Yi Fan smiled. Even though he and this little Taoist boy were more than 10 years apart, they were very close. Every time he saw this little guy, his mood would improve. You finally came. This immortal boy was almost worried to death. The little Taoist boy quickly closed the door and jogged in front of Yi Fan. I really didn't expect that Mingyu would have times when he was worried. Seeing the little Taoist boy's anxious appearance, Yi Fan smiled. Let's not talk about other things first. Quick, quick, let me see my sword. The little Taoist boy rubbed his little hands as he looked with shining eyes at the yellow cloth bag on Yi Fan's back. Look at how anxious you are. Yi Fan smiled as he took the yellow cloth bag from his back and handed it to the little Taoist boy. For you. The little Taoist boy did not say anything else and snatched the yellow cloth bag from Yi Fan's hand. He impatiently shook off the yellow cloth. After the yellow cloth fell off, an antique long wooden box appeared in front of the two. The wooden box was 3 feet long and 6 inches wide. It was smooth and had a simple design. The little Taoist boy held the wooden box with one hand and slowly opened the lid with the other. Bam! Rays of light burst forth, and waves of air dispersed in all directions. The moment the wooden box was opened by the little Taoist boy, a dazzling green light shot up into the sky from the sword box. The little Taoist boy's gold-threaded Taoist robe fluttered in the wind by the shockwave. The dazzling green light illuminated his excited face. He opened his eyes wide and gently stroked the sword lying in the wooden box, as if he was looking at an old friend he hadn't seen for many years. What a powerful sword chi! Yi Fan was deeply shocked by the scene before him. He did not expect that the sword that Yi Yun had forged this time would be so powerful. Even before the sword was unsheathed, it could release such a powerful sword chi. Wang! Under the Taoist boy's gentle touch, the sword in the wooden box began to tremble. The little Taoist boy gently took the sword out of the wooden box and held it in his hand. Strangely enough, once the sword was in the Taoist boy's hand, it immediately quieted down. As the green light of the sword gradually converged, Yi Fan saw the true appearance of the divine weapon. The sword was 3 feet and 3 inches long and was surrounded by a green light. There was a red-crowned crane on the hilt of the sword. The red-crowned crane extended its wings and sang loudly. It was very lifelike and very lively. On the scabbard, there were 9 auspicious clouds revolving around it. Within the auspicious clouds, there were 7 stars shining. What is the name of this sword? The little Taoist boy looked at the sword in his hand and asked Yi Fan. Vanishing Shadow. Yi Fan said to the little Taoist boy. Vanishing Shadow. The little Taoist boy muttered to himself, unprecedented, invisible and formless. Good name. Wang. The little Taoist boy said as he slowly pulled the sword out of the scabbard. Green light, dazzling green light. Less than an inch after the sword came out of the scabbard, thousands of green lights gushed out from the sword. As the sword completely came out of the scabbard, a peerless divine weapon appeared. I didn't expect that we would meet again in this life. The little Taoist boy smiled and held the sword in front of him. As he touched the dazzling sword with his hand, he muttered to himself, in this life we have new names. I am Mingyu, and you are Vanishing Shadow. As the saying goes, when I raise my cup to Mingyu, we become 3 shadows. It seems that the two of us will never be separated. Wang. The vanishing shadow sword in the little Taoist boy's hand seemed to understand his words and instantly began to chirp excitedly. When Yi Fan, who was standing at the side, saw this, he was shocked. The vanishing shadow sword was connected to the little Taoist boy's mind. What surprised him even more was that the little Taoist boy didn't look like a child at all. Instead, he looked more like a weather-beaten old man. "Vanishing shadow," he said to the shining divine weapon in his hand, "today we meet again after a long time. I will play with you." Swish! As the little Taoist boy said, his body shook and instantly disappeared. What a fast body movement! Yi Fan thought as he looked up into the sky. High in the sky, the little Taoist boy, who was surrounded by green light, held the sword in one hand and soared into the sky like a meteor. The little Taoist boy, who was rushing up quickly, smiled, and his golden Taoist robe was fluttering. What a powerful aura! Looking at the little Taoist boy who was soaring up, Yi Fan was amazed. From what the little Taoist boy said to the vanishing shadow sword and the performance of the vanishing shadow sword, it could be inferred that the vanishing shadow sword had a deep relationship with the little Taoist boy. What was the little Taoist boy's identity in his previous life? How could he, who was less than 8 years old, have such a peerless cultivation? Yi Fan sighed with emotion. Swish! The little Taoist boy, who was above the clouds, stopped and quietly floated in the air. He held his sword with a calm expression as he stared at the crescent moon above his head in a daze. Swish! Yi Fan, who was on the ground, moved. With a flash, he disappeared from his original spot. Swish! In the blink of an eye, Yi Fan came to the little Taoist boy's side. "What are you looking at?" Yi Fan asked the little Taoist boy. "Looking at the moon," the little Taoist boy answered Yi Fan with a smile. "It's been a long time since I saw the moon so close." "You also like to look at the moon?" Yi Fan asked. "Do you think only you, Eldritch, likes to look at it?" The little Taoist boy turned his head and looked at Yi Fan with a smile. "My Mingyu fairy child also likes to look at it." "Tonight is not a good day to admire the moon," Yi Fan said as he looked at the crescent moon that was gradually disappearing in the clouds. "There are too many clouds." The little Taoist boy smiled. "So what if there are too many clouds? Can't we just get rid of it?" "Get rid of it?" Yi Fan smiled and asked, "How do we get rid of it?" At this time, the clouds in Yikong above their heads were connected like waves. The crescent moon was completely covered by the clouds and could not be seen. Chapter 328. Play a Trick. Yi Fan asked doubtfully. The little Taoist boy chuckled and slowly raised the dazzling absolute shadow sword above his head with one hand. He narrowed his eyes and calmed himself down. 1. As the little Taoist boy gradually exerted his strength, his body was instantly surrounded by golden light. The shadow sword in his hand was even more dazzling. What are you doing?" Yi Fan didn't understand why the little Taoist boy wanted to activate the shadow sword. The little Taoist boy glanced at Yi Fan and curled his lips, uttering 4 words, "Vanishing shadow of the breeze." Swish! As the little Taoist boy spoke, he swung down the dazzling vanishing shadow sword in his hand. The little Taoist boy swung the sword so quickly that it formed a green light curtain from top to bottom. Swish! With the sound of the air breaking, a green light arc that was as thick as a bowl and more than 100 feet long suddenly rushed out of the shadow sword and went straight to the sea of clouds in the sky. This scene immediately made the puzzled Yi Fan understand the little Taoist boy's intention. This little guy wants to split the sea of clouds. Boom! With a huge roar, a grand scene that made Yi Fan stunned appeared in front of him. The dense and boundless sea of clouds was instantly split open by the little Taoist child's sword, creating a 7-foot-wide cloud path. On both sides of the sea of clouds, the billowing white clouds rolled back quickly like waves. The momentum was amazing. In the sky, the crescent moon appeared again and the cold light shone on the two people again. With a smile on his face, the little Taoist boy slowly sheathed the shadow sword in his hand and carried it on his back. The stupefied Yi Fan's mouth opened into an O shape and his face was full of disbelief. Was this little guy a deity in his previous life? He actually split the sea of clouds in half with one sword. What kind of strength did he have to be able to do that? How is it? Not bad, right? The little Taoist boy said to the stunned Yi Fan with a smug expression. You call this not bad? Yi Fan said as he slowly turned his head to look at the little Taoist boy. Hee. The little Taoist boy touched the back of his head and laughed. Brother Yi, I've made a fool of myself. I've made a fool of myself. Let me ask you, who was the deity in your previous life? How can you be so powerful at such a young age? Yi Fan directly asked the little Taoist boy. You've guessed correctly. I was indeed an immortal in my past life. However, the little Taoist boy smiled at Yi Fan. However, I can't tell you which immortal I was. You can't tell me? Yi Fan raised his eyebrows and asked. I can't. The little Taoist boy shook his head like a rattle drum. I'll die if I tell you. Someone will die? Yi Fan asked back, who will die? I'll die. The little Taoist boy pointed at his nose and said. You'll die. Yi Fan asked doubtfully. That's right. If I tell anyone about my previous life, I'll definitely die, and I'll die very miserably. I won't even be able to return my hand. The little Taoist boy said to Yi Fan. Won't even be able to return your hand? Yi Fan asked. Who's so powerful that you can't even return your hand? My master. The little Taoist boy said seriously to Yi Fan. My master will kill me. Yi Fan was completely speechless. You didn't come to me just to give me the sword, right? The little Taoist boy looked at Yi Fan's silver hair and said meaningfully. I don't think I need to tell you about my situation. Yi Fan went straight to the point. What should I do now? Don't ask me about this. I don't dare to make decisions for you. The little Taoist boy looked at Yi Fan and said. Don't ask you? The little Taoist boy's words surprised Yi Fan. Don't you have the ability to predict the future? If I don't ask you, who else can I ask? Look at how anxious you are. The little Taoist boy looked at Yi Fan's silly look and said with a smile. You don't want to admit that you're stupid. To tell you the truth, you're lucky this time. Master will be back soon. If you have any questions, you can ask him. What? The little Taoist boy's words made Yi Fan overjoyed. He squatted down and pressed down on the little Taoist boy's shoulder and shook him back and forth. You say that Qingqinzi Elder will be returning to Purple Sun Temple soon? Hey. The little Taoist boy was a little dizzy from Yi Fan's shaking. He struggled to push Yi Fan's hand away and said impatiently, If you have something to say it properly. Why are you shaking me? This golden silk robe is newly made. You have to pay for it if it's ruined. The little Taoist boy said as he lowered his head to fix his robe that had been crumpled by Yi Fan. Tell me quickly, when will Qingqinzi Elder be back? Yi Fan asked anxiously. Soon. The little Taoist boy continued to fix his robe without looking up. When is soon? Tonight? Tomorrow? Yi Fan couldn't wait to see Qingqinzi right now. A little Taoist boy had such divination abilities. Then wouldn't Qingqinzi be like a god, knowing 500 years in the past and 500 years in the future? You want to know? The little Taoist boy finished fixing his robe and looked up at Yi Fan with a smile. Of course I want to know, Yi Fan said. Don't keep me in suspense. I'm dying of anxiety. Chapter 329. Just say it, as long as I can do it, let alone one condition. Even if it's a condition, I will agree to it. Yi Fan patted his chest and said to the little Taoist boy. That's good. The little Taoist boy revealed an innocent smile. Can you let me hold Baihu, who is on your shoulder, for a while? This. Yi Fan was stunned after hearing the little Taoist boy's words. He did not expect the little Taoist boy's condition to be this. He turned his head to look at Xiao Zhao, who was lying on his left shoulder, and did not know how to answer. When Baihu heard that the little Taoist boy wanted to hold it, it immediately turned its head and hid behind Yi Fan's head. Its claws tightly pressed on Yi Fan's shoulder, for fear that the little Taoist boy would take it away. It did not have a good impression of Taoists, even though it knew that the little Taoist boy in front of it was a good person. It was Baihu's body, but it was still a few 100 years old. How could it be held in the arms of a 7 or 8-year-old little Taoist boy? Ever since it was young, it had only been in contact with 3 people of the opposite sex. Its father, Eldritch, who saved its life, and now Yi Fan. The little Taoist boy was shut out and his eyes were wide open. Yi Fan smiled awkwardly at the little Taoist boy, expressing his helplessness. "All right, I still have something to do. You guys wait here for Master. He should be back in a few days, so I'll take my leave first," the little Taoist boy said as his face tightened. He flicked his sleeves and turned to leave. "Mingyu, Mingyu!" Yi Fan shouted at the little Taoist boy. "What, does this fellow Taoist have something else to say?" The little Taoist boy turned around and looked at Yi Fan with the demeanor of a great master. "That, Xiao Zhao," Yi Fan turned his head and said to Baihu, who was hiding behind him, How about you let him hold you?" Baihu stared at Yi Fan with a pair of bright eyes, and then turned her head to look at the little Taoist boy, seemingly hesitant. Cough, cough, cough. The little Taoist boy pretended to cough while stealing glances at Baihu. "Xiao Zhao, don't be afraid, I'll tell you," Yi Fan said as he moved his mouth close to Baihu's ear, and said in a very small voice. "He's only 7 or 8 years old, but you're already several 100 years old. Don't argue with him, let him hold you for a while, just treat it as coaxing a child." After Baihu heard Yi Fan's words, she stuck out her pink tongue and licked Yi Fan's face a few times, indicating that she agreed. Yi Fan was right. She was already several 100 years old, and this little Taoist boy was only 7 or 8 years old. According to seniority, this little Taoist boy could even call her grandmother. It was normal for a grandmother to play with her grandson for a while. Taoist priest Mingyu, Xiao Zhao agreed. Yi Fan immediately said to the little Taoist boy when he saw that Xiao Zhao had agreed. The little Taoist boy, who had a serious expression a moment ago, heard Yi Fan's words, and his eyes suddenly lit up. "Really? How would I dare to lie to you?" Yi Fan said with a smile. "That's great," the little Taoist boy said as he walked in front of Yi Fan with a face full of surprise, and reached out to hug Baihu, who was on Yi Fan's shoulder. Baihu did not resist this time, and was held in the arms of the little Taoist boy. He, the little Taoist boy laughed like a child, and constantly stroked Baihu's smooth fur with his hands. Baihu had a face full of reluctance, and from time to time, she would use her furry tail to gently slap the little Taoist boy's face, making the little Taoist boy laugh. This Xiao Zhao was quite good at coaxing children. Yi Fan laughed in his heart. "Now can you tell me when Senior Qing Chenzi will be back?" Yi Fan said to the little Taoist boy, who was laughing and playing with Baihu. He. The little Taoist boy kept dodging Baihu's tail, and said to Yi Fan with a smile, "Don't worry, Master will be back in less than an hour." Yi Fan's face turned green when he heard the little Taoist's words. He had just said that it would take a few days and now, he had said that it would take 2 hours. If he had known earlier, he would not have asked Xiao Zhao to coax the little guy. He could have just waited here. Zing. After hearing the little Taoist boy's words, Baihu, who was in his arms, jumped back onto Yi Fan's shoulder. The little Taoist boy was first stunned, and then smiled. "This spirit fox is really smart. From what I see, this fox will not be a fish in the pond in the future. I say, immortal child, you have accepted the sword, and you have hugged Xiao Zhao, you should invite us in for tea," Yi Fan said to the little Taoist boy with a smile. "Letting us stay outside, is this how you treat guests?" Of course. The little Taoist boy said to Yi Fan with a smile, "Follow me." The little Taoist boy said as his body moved, and he slowly landed on the ground. Yi Fan smiled, and followed the little Taoist boy into the Purple Sun Temple. The two of them landed in a bamboo forest in the Purple Sun Temple one after the other. In the bamboo forest, an ancient bamboo house appeared in front of the two of them. The bamboo forest here was green, and the environment was quiet. When the wind blew, the bamboo leaves rustled, and there was a feeling of transcendence. This is the place where Master usually meditates. It is called the Green Bamboo Pavilion. Please come in. The little Taoist boy said as he pushed open the bamboo door, and invited Yi Fan in. Yi Fan slowly walked in. After entering the house, Yi Fan started to examine the bamboo house. The decorations in the bamboo house were simple and elegant. Almost all of the items were made of bamboo. The bamboo floor, bamboo wood table, bamboo rattan chair, bamboo teapot, bamboo cup, bamboo bookshelf, bamboo desk, and even the meditation mat were made of bamboo. On the bamboo desk there was an incense burner and several Taoist scriptures. As the saying goes, a burner of eternal longevity incense, and several reincarnation talismans. Chapter 330. What a wonderful quiz, Hukshuan! Yi Fan exclaimed in his heart. They sat down in front of a bamboo table. Master doesn't usually drink tea. He only drinks spring water. You'll have to make do with it, the little Taoist boy said as he picked up the bamboo pot on the table and poured 2 cups of spring water in front of Yi Fan. Out of the 2 cups of spring water, one was for Yi Fan and the other was for the white fox. Xiao Zhao, drink water, Yi Fan said to Bai Hu on his shoulder as he picked up the bamboo cup and drank the spring water in one gulp. The spring water was sweet and refreshing. As soon as it entered his stomach, he felt refreshed. Good water, Yi Fan exclaimed. It's really good water. Bai Hu on his shoulder heard Yi Fan's words and jumped onto the table. She stuck out her pink tongue and began to drink the other cup of water. You haven't had a good time recently, right? The little Taoist boy asked Yi Fan while pouring water for himself. What do you think? Yi Fan asked the little Taoist boy. If I had a good time, how could I be like this now? I don't look like a human, but I don't look like a ghost. I think your silver hair is very beautiful, hee, the little Taoist boy said with a smile. With white hair and a youthful face, you look like an immortal. At this time, you are still in the mood to joke with me, Yi Fan said. Everything is destined. You should take it easy. The little Taoist boy put the bamboo cup to his mouth and took a sip. Then he said, If it's a blessing, it's not a curse. If it's a curse, it can't be avoided. I will pay for what I did in my last life. But Chico is innocent. She did nothing wrong. Why should she be tortured like this? Yi Fan said to the little Taoist boy. This is God's punishment for you. Do you understand? The Taoist boy put down his bamboo cup and looked at Yi Fan as he spoke. The little Taoist boy's words hit the nail on the head, and Yi Fan's body immediately trembled. He stared at the little Taoist in a daze. He was speechless and didn't know what to say. The more you like something, the more you care about it, the more God will make you lose it. It will tear your heart apart and tear your lungs apart. It will make you feel heart-wrenching pain. It will make you have nowhere to cry for help. This is your punishment, the little Taoist boy said calmly to Yi Fan. The little Taoist boy's words were like a knife that cut open Yi Fan's heart. In an instant, all the pain in Yi Fan's heart was exposed. That's right. Just like what the little Taoist boy said, the more you care about something, the faster you lose it. Yi Fan fell into deep thought. When he was young, he cared about his parents the most, but his mother mysteriously disappeared. When he grew up, he cared about his father and grandfather, but the Yi family was stripped of their titles and was wanted everywhere. His grandfather and father were forced to leave the great Ming dynasty. Later, he met Xiao Zhao and Chico. Of these 2 women who were very important to him, one's soul was separated, and the other's soul was separated. This was God's merciless punishment for him. Tao is one with heaven and earth, virtue matches yin and yang, life has a time, and death has a place. Everything is predestined. The little Taoist boy said to Yi Fan, Even if you have a cultivation base, what can you do? The soul-returning immortal grass can save the lives of millions of people, but it can't save your wife's life. You rushed from the great Ming dynasty to the northernmost place exactly 2 hours ago, and you rashly practiced the supreme secret technique, but you came out unscathed. You have 2 great inner cores, one yin and one yang, in your sea of qi, 2 divine weapons, one yin and one yang, in your hands, and one righteous and one evil consciousness in your spiritual platform. Do you think all these are mere coincidences? Yi Fan was silent. This is your fate, your destiny. As the little Taoist boy said this, he once again picked up the bamboo cup and drank a mouthful of spring water. In fact, there is no such thing as God. The so-called God can be replaced by another word. Which word? Yi Fan calmly asked. Karma. The little Taoist boy spat out these 2 words. Yi Fan's heart shook. Good and evil karma follows like a shadow. The karma of 3 lives is not lost. The little Taoist child raised his head and looked at Yi Fan before continuing. In your previous life, you've killed too many people and your sins are grave, causing you to suffer incessantly in this life. However, due to your good nature in your previous life, you've accumulated quite a bit of good karma. That's why in this life, you've gained your cultivation base and talent, and everyone is helping you. Merits are merits, demerits are demerits, and merits and demerits are mixed. Karma is not good. The little Taoist boy's words were like pearls, and they were not wrong in the slightest. Yi Fan listened with trepidation, and cold sweat flowed down his back. The little Taoist boy's words were simply too correct. In terms of cultivation, he was not inferior to anyone. In terms of friends, which of the people around him did not have a shocking cultivation? In terms of wealth, he was even more wealthy, with gold and silver like a mountain. But even so, he was still facing difficulties and difficulties. He could not even realize such a small wish of living a peaceful life with his wife. If this was not fate, what was it? If this was not karma, what was it? Tell me, what should I do? Yi Fan said to the little Taoist boy. You are really a person of high status with short memory. The little Taoist boy smiled and said, Didn't Master tell you before? The one who started the trouble should end it. You have to pay your debts yourself, and fill the hole you dug yourself. I have tried my best, but I still can't save Chico's life. Yi Fan said in a low voice. The one who started the trouble should end it. He was Chico's savior. More than one person had said these words to him. But he had tried his best, and besides agreeing to Matsumoto Takeyoshi to help him find the cauldron, there was nothing else he could do. Ah, what I owed you in my previous life, I am destined to pay you back in this life. The little Taoist boy shook his head and sighed. You are Eldritch and I am Mingyu. You have Snake Shadow and I have Shadow Shadow. You live in the Lingyun Cave and I live in the Xiang Temple. Fortunately, I am not a woman in this life, otherwise I would probably be entangled with you. Chapter 331. Its Master. When the little Taoist boy heard this voice, he immediately slid down from his seat and ran out of the door. He looked up into the sky. Qing Qinzi had returned. When Yi Fan heard this, he did not dare to be rash. He quickly walked out of the door and looked up into the sky. When Baihu saw Yi Fan go out, she immediately ran out as well. High up in the sky, a large group of white auspicious clouds floated over. On top of the auspicious clouds, a middle-aged Taoist was looking down with a smile on his face. This person was wearing a golden crown with dragon and tiger threads. He was wearing a golden Taoist robe with 8 trigrams. He had an emerald jade belt around his waist and a pair of apricot yellow shoes on his feet. His appearance was dignified and handsome. His eyes were bright and full of vitality. He had an auspicious aura around him. What a high Taoist true immortal! Yi Fan praised from the bottom of his heart. When the huge auspicious clouds floated above the bamboo house, they began to slowly disperse. The middle-aged Taoist had already disappeared. Where was Qing Qinzi? How did he disappear? Yi Fan looked at the little Taoist boy with a puzzled expression. The little Taoist boy was also puzzled. Both of you come in. Just when the two of them were looking at each other, Qingqunzi's voice came from inside the bamboo house. This voice immediately shocked Yi Fan, who had a puzzled look on his face. What kind of movement technique was this? He was already in the state of rock-shattering heaven, but he did not notice it at all. Why are you in a daze? The little Taoist boy tugged at Yi Fan's corner. Why aren't you coming in to greet Master? Yi Fan was pulled back by the little Taoist boy. He then followed behind Ming Yu and entered the bamboo house. Inside the bamboo house, Qingqunzi was holding a bamboo cup and sitting on a bamboo chair, drinking water leisurely. There were 2 treasured swords on the bamboo table. One was green and the other was golden. A golden bell was attached to the hilt of the golden sword. Disciple greets Master. After the Taoist boy entered the room, he immediately knelt on the ground and saluted Qingqunzi. Junior Yi Fan greets Senior. Yi Fan shook his long sleeves and followed the little Taoist boy to kneel on the ground and kowtow to Qingqunzi. Both of you get up. Qingqunzi smiled at the two of them. The two of them stood up. Qingqunzi stared at the silver-haired Yi Fan and emotionally said, "The days have passed so quickly. Back then, when Brother Yi brought you to my temple, you were still an infant. I didn't expect you to be so big now." Yi Fan bowed and cupped his hands towards Qingqunzi as he said, "My father often mentions you to me. It's a pity that I've been busy with worldly affairs and haven't been able to visit you. Please forgive me." Busy with worldly affairs? Qingqunzi smiled. Your affairs aren't worldly affairs. Yi Fan's heart trembled. The little Taoist boy was able to calculate his affairs clearly, let alone Qingqunzi, who was skilled in Taoism. Junior has come here to deliver the sword to little Taoist Mingyu. Secondly, I would like to ask Senior for guidance. Yi Fan knelt in front of Qingqunzi once again and lowered his head. Senior, please be merciful and save my Qianzi. Qingqunzi put down the bamboo cup in his hand and stopped smiling. He looked calmly at Yi Fan and did not speak for a long time. Yi Fan knelt there with his head lowered. Qingqunzi did not speak, and he did not dare to get up. How do you want me to help you? Qingqunzi asked. Senior, please enlighten me and tell me what I should do now. Yi Fan said with his head lowered. I can help you save your wife, but from then on, you have to follow me and become a monk. You can't see her again. Can you do that? Qingqunzi asked Yi Fan. Yi Fan, who was kneeling on the ground, was stunned at first. Then he frowned and slowly shook his head. Then I'll change my condition. Qingqunzi continued. After saving your wife, I'll use Taoism to erase all memories of the two of you. From then on, you'll be separated from each other. Are you willing to do that? Yi Fan shook his head again. He could not do either of the two things Qingqunzi mentioned. Qingqunzi smiled. You want me to enlighten you, but you can't do it. In that case, there's nothing I can do. As he spoke, he picked up the bamboo cup. The two of you have an ill-fated relationship in your previous life. If you two are together in this life, you will definitely suffer many hardships. If you want both of you to be safe, the only way is to cut off all ties. Qingqunzi's words immediately made Yi Fan, who was kneeling on the ground, feel as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. He did not expect that he would have to pay such a painful price to save his beloved wife. The little Taoist boy, who was standing at the side, frowned and did not say a word. Baihu Xiaozhao, who was standing next to the little Taoist boy, looked at Yi Fan with tears in her eyes. Senior, Yi Fan looked up at Qingqunzi. His eyes were red as he said calmly, Can you only erase her memories and not mine? I can leave her, but I can't forget her. Yi Fan's words caused Qingqunzi, who was about to drink water, to stop the bamboo cup in his mouth. What a devoted man! Qingqunzi frowned and looked up at Yi Fan. Yi Fan's eyes were red and his lips were trembling. 2 lines of tears slowly flowed out. Woo! Baihu sobbed as she ran to Yi Fan. She lifted her front leg and placed it on Yi Fan's body. She stuck out her pink tongue to lick the tears that flowed out of Yi Fan's eyes. Woo! After Baihu finished licking Yi Fan's tears, she suddenly crawled in front of Qin Chenzi and kept nodding to Qin Chenzi. She was pleading with Qin Chenzi. If she really did that, Yi Fan could only live in pain for the rest of his life. She did not want Yi Fan to suffer, even if that would give her a chance to be with Yi Fan. Master, the little Taoist boy said to Qin Chenzi with red eyes, why don't you help him? Qin Chenzi looked up at the little Taoist boy. The little Taoist boy immediately lowered his head. Looking at the man and fox in front of him, Qin Chenzi's heart was touched. Chapter 332. Qin Chenzi's words immediately made Yi Fan's heart happy. There are other ways. Yi Fan thought in his heart. Senior, is there any other way to save Chico? Yi Fan wiped his tears and asked anxiously. Baihu, who was constantly bowing to Qin Chenzi, immediately raised her head and looked at Qin Chenzi anxiously. The little Taoist boy grinned. His master's heart had softened. Mingyu, take Xiao Zhao out first. I have something to say to her alone. Qin Chenzi said to the little Taoist boy. Oh, okay. The little Taoist boy happily agreed as he quickly walked in front of the white fox. He hugged the stunned white fox in his arms and ran out happily. Since Master promised to give Yi Fan the third way, it proved that there was still hope. The little Taoist boy's face was full of joy. Inside the bamboo house, Qin Chenzi frowned and quietly looked at Yi Fan. Yi Fan did not dare to breathe, afraid that Qin Chenzi would go back on his word and not tell him the third way. Do you know why Matsumoto Takeyoshi is looking for the 9 cauldrons? After a long time, Qin Chenzi asked Yi Fan. I know, whoever obtains the 9 cauldrons will obtain the world. Yi Fan replied, Matsumoto Takeyoshi wants the world of the Ming dynasty. You are wrong. Qin Chenzi stood up and gently helped Yi Fan up. Matsumoto Takeyoshi doesn't only want the world of the Ming dynasty. Not only the world of the Ming dynasty. Yi Fan was shocked. Then what else does he want? Ascension to immortality, immortality. Qin Chenzi calmly said to Yi Fan. Ascension to immortality? Immortality? Qin Chenzi's words made Yi Fan dumbfounded. He was stunned. It is true that whoever obtains the 9 cauldrons will obtain the world, but there is a shocking secret hidden within them. Qin Chenzi stared into Yi Fan's eyes and said, A shocking secret? What secret? Yi Fan asked. Back then, King Yu divided the world into the 9 prefectures. He ordered the 9 prefectures to offer bronze as tribute and forge the 9 cauldrons. Before that, he ordered people to draw all the famous mountains, rivers, lakes, seas, ghosts, deities, spirits, and strange things in the 9 regions into a book and engrave them on the body of the cauldron. As Qin Chenzi spoke, he sat back down on the bamboo chair. However, the world only knows one thing, but not the other. According to the records, there is a shocking secret technique hidden within the intricate patterns of the divine cauldron. If you can gather all the patterns of the 9 cauldrons, you can obtain the ancient secret technique. If you can obtain the inscriptions within the 9 cauldrons, you can understand the mysteries of heaven and earth, the foundation of creation, immortality, and endless power. Matsumoto Takeyoshi's real goal is immortality and to obtain the strongest power. Qin Chenzi continued, seizing the world of the Ming dynasty is just an excuse for him to the outside world. After Yi Fan heard this, he was shocked. He didn't expect that there was such a shocking secret hidden within the 9 cauldrons. He also didn't expect Matsumoto Takeyoshi to be so ambitious. If you can obtain the patterns engraved on the outside of the 9 cauldrons, you will have the opportunity to study the ancient secret technique inside, Qin Chenzi said to Yi Fan. In that case, your wife will naturally be able to leave the cauldron safely. Senior means that as long as I find all 9 cauldrons and obtain the patterns engraved on the cauldrons, Chico will be saved? Yi Fan said in surprise. It's easy to say, but it's not that simple, Qingqinzi said with a frown. Let me tell you, if you want to obtain the secret technique, you must do 3 things. Each of these 3 things is as difficult as ascending to heaven. What 3 things? Yi Fan asked. The first thing is to find the 9 cauldrons, Qingqinzi said calmly. Each of the 9 cauldrons is protected by an extremely powerful enchantment. Not to mention ordinary people, even experts with extremely high cultivation may not be able to see them. As far as I know, these 9 cauldrons have already gained intelligence and their locations often change. They may be at the peak of a mountain or within the waves. They are extremely difficult to find. After Yi Fan heard this, he frowned. He had looked for the soul-returning grass before and knew how difficult it was to find something. If the soul-returning grass protected by a spiritual object was so difficult to find, it would be even more difficult to find a cauldron with a powerful enchantment in the entire Ming dynasty. What's the second thing? Yi Fan asked with a frown. Break the enchantment and obtain the patterns engraved on the 9 cauldrons, Qingqinzi said. The enchantment of each cauldron is extremely domineering and different. Without a powerful force, it is impossible to break the enchantment. If you want to break the enchantment, you must have the power of an immortal. The power of an immortal? Yi Fan frowned. That's right, Qingqinzi continued. Among the 9 cauldrons there are 5 yang and 4 yin. The materials used are completely different. 5 of them are made with the yang method and are made with the yang material. The 4 of them are made with the yin number and are made with the female metal. The yin cauldron has strong yin energy and the yang cauldron has blazing yang energy. If you want to completely break the enchantment, you must use yin to break yin and yang to break yang. In other words, you need the power of 2 immortals, yin and yang. Senior, what is the power of an immortal? Yi Fan frowned and asked Qingqinzi. Could it be that only immortals have the power of an immortal? Not necessarily, Qingqinzi shook his head and said. An immortal is an immortal, and the power of an immortal is an immortal. The two don't have much to do with each other. Let me put it this way. An immortal must have the power of an immortal, but not only immortals have the power of an immortal. Chapter 333. He had heard from Xiao Zhao that Nieqing was in charge of the 1,000 Demon Hall, and Bai Xing was in charge of the 10,000 Immortals House. Both of their cultivations were heaven-defying, and their strength was far beyond that of an earth immortal. Needless to say, the White-Robed Dragon and Brother Kim were even more powerful. The White-Robed Dragon was one of the 8 heavenly dragons and worked in the Thunder Department. He was a real immortal. As for whether Brother Kim was an immortal, Yi Fan was not sure. However, he knew that Brother Kim's cultivation had long surpassed that of an immortal. Otherwise, Tianjizi and Yunzhongzi would have been able to deduce his identity. As long as he had the help of these 4 people, he was not afraid that he could not open the 9 cauldrons enchantment. Among the people you are thinking of, except for your Brother Kim, I'm afraid the rest can't help you for the time being. Qingqinzi completely saw through Yi Fan's thoughts while Yi Fan was deep in thought. What? These people can't help me? Yi Fan raised his head and looked at Qingqinzi with a shocked expression. I haven't finished my words. A real immortal will never easily intervene in the affairs of the mortal world. The 9 cauldrons enchantment is of great importance. Those immortals in the heaven realm can't intervene without the order from the upper realm. Qingqinzi looked at Yi Fan and said slowly, the sky dragon that you have worshipped for generations is already a real immortal from the upper realm. If he could intervene in the affairs of the mortal world, he would have already done so. How could your Yi clan suffer such a disaster? There's also that mysterious expert who taught you his cultivation. Although I can't divine his identity, I can guess that he won't easily make a move. Think about it, if he could directly make a move, how could you and your wife be separated by life and death? Separated by life and death? How is it possible for your sworn sister to lose her Naiden and her cultivation? Yi Fan was silent. Qing Qinzi wasn't wrong at all. If Sky Dragon and Big Brother Jean had taken action, none of this calamity would have happened. All of these are predestined, Qing Qinzi said to Yi Fan. It's hard to change one's destiny. What about Nye Qing and Bai Xing? Yi Fan asked Qing Qinzi again. They are not immortals. Why can't they help me? The two of them are already helping you, otherwise you would have died long ago. How could you still be standing here? Qing Qinzi said, returning to his seat. What? Without them I would be dead? Yi Fan was completely confused by Qing Qinzi's words. He did not know what Qing Qinzi meant. One had to know that he had never seen Nye Qing and Bai Xing in this life. How could they possibly help him? Why did Qing Qinzi say that he was able to survive until now because of their help? Senior, what do you mean? Yi Fan asked Qing Qinzi. Let me ask you, did you go to Japan? Qing Qinzi said as he picked up the bamboo cup and took a sip. That's right, Yi Fan replied. In order to find the soul-gathering evil cauldron and save Chico's soul, I indeed went to Japan. You really are confused. Qing Qinzi put down the bamboo cup and said to Yi Fan, why don't you think about what kind of place Japan is? That is Xie Tian's headquarters. The 9 demons and 10 guards are all there. With your current cultivation, you might not be at a disadvantage in a one-on-one fight, but if they attack you together or if Xie Tian personally makes a move, do you think you can return safely? You think too simply of them. Not to mention anything else, the soul-gathering cauldron is filled with demons and ghosts. Xie Tian doesn't even need to use the 9 demons and 10 guards. He can just casually release several large demons and ghost demons from the cauldron. Also, you being able to obtain the soul-gathering evil cauldron is not because of you or Ito Fumio, but because Xie Tian purposely used you to bring the evil cauldron to Matsumoto Takeyoshi. Qing Qinzi's words completely shocked Yi Fan, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. After he killed Inchan Dashyong that day, he directly rushed to Japan without thinking too much. One reason was because he wanted to save his wife, so he wanted to find the soul-gathering evil cauldron as soon as possible. 2 was because he had just finished the 2nd level of the mysterious sky secret technique, the rock-shattering heaven shocking, so he was very confident in his spiritual energy. He didn't put Xie Tian in his eyes at all. Now that he heard Qing Qinzi say this, he felt like he had just walked through the gates of hell. Do you understand now? Qing Qinzi picked up the bamboo pot and poured water into his cup as he said to Yi Fan, if it wasn't for Nye Qing and Bai Xing protecting you in the dark, you would have died more than 10 times. How could you come back alive? What? Yi Fan's eyes opened wide as he looked at Qing Qinzi in disbelief. When I was in Japan, Nye Qing and Bai Xing were secretly protecting me. What do you think? Qing Qinzi put down the bamboo cup in his hand and said, let me tell you, when you were still a normal person, Nye Qing and Bai Xing had already rushed to Japan. Their goal was to secretly observe the movements of the ghost realm and demon realm in Japan. It was also because of them that Xie Tian didn't dare to make a move against you. Senior, you said that Xie Tian has 9 demons and 10 guards under him. There are thousands of demons in the soul-gathering evil cauldron, so why didn't he make a move against Nye Qing and Bai Xing? Yi Fan asked. After hearing Yi Fan's words, Qing Qinzi smiled. No wonder Ming Yu said you were stupid. One of them is the head of the 1,000 Demon Hall, while the other is the head of the 10,000 Immortals House. Not only are their cultivations unfathomable, but they also have tens of thousands of demons and demons under them. How could there be a difference in numbers? Yi Fan was stunned for a moment before he came to a realization. Xie Tian isn't stupid. He knows that once he makes a move against Nye Qing and Bai Xing, both sides will suffer great losses. It will also cause the other evil gods to become restless. Qing Qinzi continued. In addition, the righteous gods of Japan have long been dissatisfied with Xie Tian and have been looking for a chance to kill him. So, he has always been like an arrow on a bow waiting to be fired. He doesn't dare to act rashly. Chapter 334. As for the third task, it's even more difficult. Qingqunzi gestured for Yi Fan to sit down as he spoke. What's the third task? Yi Fan sat down beside Qingqunzi. Study the secret technique hidden in the patterns of the 9 cauldrons. Qingqunzi poured water into Yi Fan's bamboo cup as he spoke. Yi Fan listened in silence. After breaking the enchantment of the 9 cauldrons, you can obtain the patterns on the 9 cauldrons, Qingqunzi said. However, each of the 9 cauldrons weighs over 100,000 kilograms, and the patterns engraved on the cauldrons are extremely complex. Not only does it require a great deal of patience, but it also requires an extremely high level of intelligence. As far as I know, the process of studying the patterns of the 9 cauldrons is fraught with danger. If you're not careful, you'll be mesmerized by the illusion formations set up by the patterns. If you're not careful, you'll suffer from qi deviation and lose your mind. After hearing this, Yi Fan's brows furrowed into a knot. Each of the 3 tasks Qingqunzi mentioned was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. There wasn't even a 1 in a million chance of succeeding. What's wrong? Are you scared? Qingqunzi looked at Yi Fan's solemn expression and asked. Senior, I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid that I won't be able to do it, Yi Fan said in a low voice. Let me ask you, do you want to save your wife? Qingqunzi asked Yi Fan. Yes. Yi Fan raised his head and answered firmly. Do you want that Baihu to return to her human form? Qingqunzi asked again. Yes. Yi Fan answered again. That's it. Qingqunzi smiled. You have to know that there's still a day when the Yellow River will clear up. As the saying goes, man proposes, but God disposes. If you don't do it, how will you know if you can succeed? But Senior, you just said that Chico and I are destined to be together in this lifetime. Even if we survive this tribulation, there will be an even greater tribulation waiting for us. I'm afraid. Yi Fan's meaning was obvious. He was afraid that after he saved his beloved wife, it wouldn't be long before the 2 of them had to part again. That's why I gave you this path, Qingqunzi said to Yi Fan. That's right, the 2 of you are together because of an ill-fated relationship in your previous life. If you were to be together, there would definitely be many disasters and unspeakable suffering. However, the heavens are benevolent. Although it's difficult for you to progress now, it's also a blessing in disguise. Fortune and misfortune together? Yi Fan didn't understand what Qingqunzi meant. Now, he only had misfortune, not fortune. Misfortune leads to fortune, and fortune leads to misfortune. Qingqunzi smiled. Matsumoto Takeyoshi coveting the 9 cauldrons is a misfortune, but for you, it is a great fortune. A great fortune? Yi Fan became more and more confused. Do you still remember the bell that I asked Mingyu to give you? Qingqunzi smiled and asked Yi Fan. I remember, of course I remember. Yi Fan replied. This bell had always been a question in his heart. His own white bell, Cui Ziwen's black bell, Xiao Zhao's green bell, Qingqunzi's golden bell, and Yi Ming's red bell that he learned from Dai Tengu. What were these bells for? Why did Qingqunzi give him the white bell? Yi Fan was puzzled. Do you know what these bells are? Qingqunzi asked Yi Fan. Yi Fan shook his head. 9 bells. Qingqunzi slowly said. 9 bells. Yi Fan was shocked. There are 9 bells? That's right. Qingqunzi said to Yi Fan. 9 bells represent 9 spirit. There are 9 of them. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple, black, and white. They are the condensation of the 9 cauldrons' true spirit. Your white bell is only one of them. The condensation of the 9 cauldrons' true spirits. Yi Fan was shocked. I just told you that if you collect all the carvings on the 9 cauldrons, you can obtain an ancient secret technique. One of them is the long-lost ancient soul retrieval technique. Qingqunzi said to Yi Fan. If you obtain this secret technique, you don't need to touch the evil soul-gathering cauldron. Even if you are thousands of miles away, you can easily retrieve your wife's soul back into your body. However, what Matsumoto Takeyoshi wanted was not this ancient secret technique, but the ancient inscriptions engraved inside the 9 cauldrons. Each cauldron's inscriptions contained an extremely strong power. If the 9 great inscriptions were combined, it would have an earth-shattering power. Matsumoto Takeyoshi wanted this power. Endless power, the power of immortality. The inscriptions inside the 9 cauldrons have been completely sealed. If you want to obtain the inscriptions inside the 9 cauldrons, you must first obtain these 9 bells. Senior, do you mean that only these 9 bells can open the seals inside the 9 cauldrons? Yifan asked in shock. You're right. Qing Chenzi nodded. Each bell can open the seal of the corresponding cauldron. It can also freely travel through enchantments. Yifan's eyes lit up when he heard this. If that was the case, then he could ask Cui Ziwen and Yi Ming for help. In addition to the golden bell in Qing Chenzi's hand, he now had 5 bells. He could obtain the patterns on the 5 cauldrons. You're thinking too simply, Qing Chenzi said as he looked at Yifan. First, each bell-keeper can only freely travel through the corresponding cauldron's enchantment. Your white bell is the Yongzhou cauldron. Naturally, it can only enter the enchantment of the Yongzhou cauldron. It has no effect on the other 8 cauldrons. Second, each bell-keeper cannot give the cauldron's patterns and the inscriptions they protect to others. They cannot practice the secret technique recorded in the cauldron's inscriptions without permission. Those who violate this rule will be punished by the heavens. Third, if anyone wants to study the ancient secret technique on the 9 cauldrons' patterns, they must rely on their own strength to gather all 9 patterns. Only then can they have the qualifications to study the secret technique. Otherwise, even if you obtain the patterns, you won't be able to decipher them. Forcefully studying them will only lead to qi deviation. In other words, other than successfully obtaining the patterns on the Yongzhou cauldron, if you want to obtain the patterns on the other 8 cauldrons, you can only rely on your own strength to break the enchantment. And if Matsumoto Takeyoshi wants to obtain the inscriptions inside the 9 cauldrons, he must obtain the 9 bells. There is no other way. Even if others have the strength to break the enchantment of the cauldrons, it will be useless to you. Yifan frowned and did not say a word. Chapter 335. You are now one of the 9 bell-keepers, Qing Chenzi continued. Actually, when your father carried you to me for my fortune-telling, I had already calculated that you would be the owner of this white bell in the future. Coincidentally, on the 2nd day after your father carried you away, these 2 bells appeared in front of me. The bell-keeper of the white bell is you, the bell-keeper of the green bell is the white fox, and the bell-keeper of the golden bell is none other than Mingyue. Soon, I will pass this golden bell to her. Little Xiao Zhao? Mingyu? Yifan could not believe his ears. He never thought that Xiao Zhao and the little Taoist boy were also bell-keepers. No wonder Xiao Zhao had the green bell. The bell-keeper's mission is very simple. You just have to protect the inscriptions inside the divine cauldron. As for who the 9 cauldrons fall into, it has nothing to do with you. Qing Chenzi continued. Protecting the inscriptions of the 9 cauldrons is a great merit and is extraordinary. Jiuling's appearance means that the 9 cauldrons are starting to feel threatened. From the looks of it, this threat is undoubtedly Matsumoto Takeyoshi. Everything that has happened now is both a calamity and an opportunity for you. It's both a blessing and a curse. As for the outcome, it all depends on you. In the future, if you have the secret technique and the merit, you and your wife's fate will definitely change. All the calamities will naturally disappear. Really? After hearing Qing Chenzi's words, Yifan's eyes lit up. Will it really be like what Senior said? Qing Chenzi's words ignited hope in Yifan's heart. A thought arises in the heart, heaven and earth know. If good and evil are not repaid, Heaven and earth must have private interests. Qingqunzi smiled and replied to Yi Fan's words with Agatha. Thank you, Senior. Yi Fan stood up and knelt in front of Qingqunzi. There is no need for you to kowtow to me. Searching for the cauldron is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Since you have already made up your mind, you must be prepared to face countless dangers, Qingqunzi said as he helped Yi Fan up. The moment Yi Fan stood up, he realized that half of Qingqunzi's hair had turned white. Say, Senior. Yi Fan asked involuntarily, You? What happened to you? Qingqunzi smiled faintly. I have already revealed the secrets of heaven to you, so naturally, I will be punished by the heavens. You are the son of my best friend, and you are also someone who values friendship and righteousness. I really can't bear to see you suffer, so I will sacrifice 3 years of my life to help you get rid of your suffering. Senior. After Yi Fan heard Qingqunzi's words, his heart shook. His eyes turned red, and he knelt in front of Qingqunzi again, kowtowing heavily to him. At this moment, tears were streaming down his face. He never thought that in order to guide him, Qingqunzi would not hesitate to lose 3 years of his lifespan and reveal the secrets of heaven. What are you doing? Get up quickly. Qingqunzi reached out to help Yi Fan, who was kowtowing nonstop on the ground. Up. Your father sacrificed 10 years of his lifespan to save you from being struck by lightning. Your father and I are best friends, so sacrificing 3 years of our lifespan is nothing. Senior. Yi Fan's voice was choked with sobs, and his tears fell like rain. Do you remember what I told you just now? Qingqunzi asked Yi Fan. Yi Fan nodded. Remember, these words can only be known to you. You must not tell anyone else. Otherwise, I will lose more than just 3 years of my lifespan. Qingqunzi reminded Yi Fan. This junior will remember. Yi Fan choked with sobs. I think you know what to do now, Qingqunzi said. Yi Fan nodded. Before we part, I have something to give you. You must remember it. Qingqunzi said to Yi Fan. Senior, please speak. Yi Fan wiped away his tears with his sleeve. Remember, not all problems can be solved with cultivation. Qingqunzi said earnestly to Yi Fan. You have to know that those who win through techniques will eventually be defeated by technique. Tao follows nature and goes with the flow. You will be successful in everything you do. I have never believed in the art of prayer, but this time, I pray that you will be able to see the sun. Even though it was only a few sentences, each and every one of them struck Yi Fan's heart. Senior, take care. Yi Fan will bid farewell. Yi Fan said to Qingqunzi with tears in his eyes. This time, Qingqunzi did not stop Yi Fan. Instead, he quietly watched as Yi Fan kowtowed to him. After 9 kowtows, Yi Fan got up and left without looking back. Qingqunzi looked at Yi Fan's back as he left. He went directly to the window and looked up at the crescent moon in the sky. On the steps outside Xiang Temple, the little Taoist boy was holding Baihu in one hand and a fruit basket in the other. He was talking to Baihu. Eat an apple. It's sweet. The little Taoist boy took a big red apple from the fruit basket and put it in front of Baihu's mouth. Baihu shook her head. She was thinking about Yi Fan and was not in the mood to eat. You don't like apples? The little Taoist boy lowered his head and asked Baihu. Baihu did not move. Then eat a banana, the little Taoist boy said as he put down the apple. He took out a banana from the fruit basket and started peeling it. Here, a banana. Eat it. He put the banana in front of Baihu's mouth. Baihu turned her head. She still did not eat it. Are you thinking about your brother Yi? The little Taoist boy saw that Baihu did not eat it. He put the banana in front of his mouth and took a big bite as he said to Baihu in his arms. Baihu in his arms nodded. Don't worry. Master sent us away. He must be telling him how to save his Japanese wife. Don't worry, the little Taoist boy said with a smile. Baihu in his arms immediately looked up at the little Taoist boy. She seemed to be thinking about the little Taoist boy's word. I, Mingyu, never lie. If I lie, I'm a dog. The little Taoist boy said as he peeled another banana and put it in front of Baihu's mouth. Eat it quickly. If you lose weight, your brother Yi will be heartbroken. This is the fruit I brought down from the ancestral table. Others can't eat it even if they want to. Baihu looked at the little Taoist boy, then looked down at the banana in his hand. She opened her mouth and took a bite. That's right, he. The little Taoist boy smiled as he stroked Baihu's fur. In the future, as long as you come here, I'll make delicious food for you. There are a lot of fruits here. I guarantee you'll like it. Come, have another bite. The little Taoist boy said as he fed Baihu again. The white fox saw that the little Taoist's eyes were clear and bright, lively and cute. It was completely different from the image of a Taoist, so it didn't hold back anymore. In addition, it was also hungry, so it didn't reject the fruits that the little Taoist handed over. Chapter 336. Speak of the devil, the main character has come out. The little Taoist boy saw Yi Fan come out and immediately stood up. He patted the dust off his butt and smiled at Yi Fan. The white fox, on the other hand, leaped into Yi Fan's arms and raised its head to look at Yi Fan quietly. How is it? Do you have a solution? The little Taoist boy asked Yi Fan. Yi Fan nodded. If you go, I'm afraid you will become the enemy of the whole world, the little Taoist boy said with a smile. This is my destiny and also my fate, Yi Fan said quietly. What the people of the world think of me has nothing to do with me. Whether it is right or wrong, there will be future generations to judge. You have reached such a high level in such a short time, the little Taoist boy said with a smile. Mingyu, I have to go. There are many things waiting for me to do. Yi Fan said as he stopped and said to the little Taoist boy, You have a good master. You must cherish him. A person that I, Mingyu, acknowledge as my master, of course he is a good master. The little Taoist boy said with a smile. Do I need you to say that? I have 3 silver notes here. Take them. Yi Fan took out 3 silver notes and handed them to the little Taoist boy. Take it as a token of my appreciation to Purple Sun Monastery. 18,000 taels. When he saw the amount of the 3 silver notes in his hand, the little Taoist boy exclaimed. He had never seen such a large amount of silver note. 10,000 taels is the incense money I donated to Purple Sun Monastery. Help me give 5,000 taels to your master. Yi Fan said to the little Taoist boy, The remaining 3,000 taels is for you. For me? The little Taoist boy was shocked and began to stutter. Life in the Taoist temple is poor. Use this money to show filial piety to your master, improve the meals of your apprentice nephews, and buy yourself a few gold-threaded Taoist robes. Yi Fan smiled. Celestial worthy of immeasurable blessings. After hearing Yi Fan's words, the little Taoist boy immediately cupped his hands and bowed to Yi Fan in all seriousness. This humble Taoist thanks benefactor Yi. You used to be a penniless Taoist, but not now. Yi Fan poked the little Taoist boy's shoulder and said with a smile, Now you have a divine weapon, banknotes, and a good master with profound Taoist powers. Are you satisfied? He. The little Taoist boy laughed as he put the banknotes into his pocket. I have to go now. Take care. Yi Fan stood and said goodbye to the little Taoist boy. Wait a moment. The little Taoist boy said as he turned and picked up the fruit basket on the steps and handed it to Yi Fan. Take this with you. Keep this for yourself. I won't take it, Yi Fan said with a smile. A child was a child. Even if this Mingyu's Taoist powers were profound, he was still a child of 7 or 8 years old. Who told you to eat it? The little Taoist boy rolled his eyes at Yi Fan. This is for Xiao Zhao. Yi Fan was speechless and could only take the fruit basket. Xiao Zhao, be good. Remember to eat more. Don't starve and lose weight. the little Taoist boy said as he stroked Baihu in Yi Fan's arms. Woo! Baihu intimately rubbed its head against the little Taoist boy's hand. Yi Fan shook his head and smiled bitterly. When the little Taoist boy wanted to hug it, it was unwilling. In less than 2 hours, it had become friends with the little Taoist boy. I really have to go now, immortal child, Yi Fan said to the little Taoist boy. Only then did the little Taoist boy reluctantly remove his hand from the white fox. Take care of yourself, immortal child. I'm leaving, Yi Fan said as his body slowly floated off the ground and flew into the air. The little Taoist boy looked up at them and waved at them with all his might. In the air, Yi Fan nodded to the little Taoist boy on the ground. Then, he used his movement technique and rushed into the clouds, East China Sea, on the warship. In the medical cabin. How do you feel, sir? Matsumoto Takeyoshi walked to the sickbed and asked the man in blue lying there. After the treatment of the accompanying ship's doctor, the man in blue had already regained consciousness, but his body was very weak. Mr. Matsumoto. When the man in blue saw Matsumoto Takeyoshi come to visit, he immediately struggled to raise his head from the sickbed and said in a weak voice, "Why did you get up? Quickly lie down," Matsumoto Takeyoshi said as he personally helped the man in blue to lie down again. "I'm ashamed to have embarrassed you, Mr. Matsumoto," the man in blue said. "It's not your fault, sir," Matsumoto Takeyoshi said to the man in blue. "I underestimated Yi Fan. Mr. Matsumoto, I'm now a cripple. I can't help you. You don't have to worry about me. Send me back to Japan," the man in blue said quietly. "What are you saying, sir?" Matsumoto Takeyoshi said as he tidied up the blanket covering the man in blue. "Although I, Matsumoto Takeyoshi, am not a good person, I'm not an ungrateful person. I've been taken care of by you for so many years. Today you're injured because of me. It's my duty to take care of you. Mr. Matsumoto." Matsumoto Takeyoshi's words surprised the man in blue. "Don't mention returning to Japan again, sir," Matsumoto Takeyoshi said sincerely to the man in blue. "Have you forgotten, sir? Before my father passed away, he told me that you, sir, have always been loyal to the Matsumoto family. You can stand up to the sun and the moon, you can govern the world with literature, and you can save the country with martial arts. My father entrusted you to assist me in front of me. Now that Matsumoto needs sir's assistance, how can sir abandon me and leave? I didn't expect you to remember this, sir." The man in blue looked at Matsumoto Takeyoshi. "Matsumoto Takeyoshi will never forget your kindness," Matsumoto Takeyoshi said as he took out an exquisite white porcelain bottle and placed it beside the man in blue's pillow. "These 12 Peiyuan pills were given to me by Taro a few years ago. It's said that they were tributes from Persia to the Ming Dynasty emperor. They have the miraculous effect of consolidating one's foundation. It's useless for me to carry them around. Today, sir was seriously injured because of me. How can this be?" The man in blue was anxious to get up. "The sooner sir recovers, the sooner you can share Matsumoto's burden," Matsumoto Takeyoshi said. The man in blue had no choice but to agree. "You need to rest now, so I won't disturb you." Matsumoto Takeyoshi stood up. "I'll come to see sir again in the evening." He nodded to the man in blue and turned to leave. "Take care of yourself. I'll take care of Mr. Matsumoto. Don't worry," the man in white said calmly to the man in blue as he turned to leave. "Brother Yamada." The man in blue who was lying on the bed called out to the man in white. The man in white stopped and turned his head. "I can't thank you enough for your help this time," the man in blue said. Chapter 337. On the way back to his birth cabin, Matsumoto Takeyoshi asked the man in white behind him, "When will he recover from his injury?" "In less than 3 days, he will be able to move freely, but he can't use spiritual power for the time being," the man in white said to Matsumoto Takeyoshi. "Even if he takes Mr. Matsumoto's energy cultivation pill, It will take at least half a year. Matsumoto Takeyoshi didn't answer and continued to walk forward. The two quickly arrived at the main cabin door. However, the moment Matsumoto Takeyoshi opened the door, the scene in front of him made him stunned. In the main cabin, Yi-fan, with a head of silver hair and a white robe, was standing in front of the soul-gathering evil cauldron in the corner of the cabin with his back to him. Whoosh! The man in white's shadow flashed and instantly blocked in front of Matsumoto Takeyoshi. He held the hilt of his sword and was ready to attack. He didn't expect Yi-fan to silently appear on this battleship, in the main cabin. One had to know that there were many experts on the warship, and it was heavily guarded. Not to mention a person, even a bug would not be able to fly in. How did Yi-fan get in? The man in white had a serious expression. Is his injury all right? Yi-fan asked as he slowly turned around. His face was expressionless. I'm afraid he won't be able to recover in a short time. Matsumoto Takeyoshi, who was behind the man in white, smiled and walked to the center of the main cabin and sat down on the futon. The man in white released his hand from the hilt of his sword and slowly walked to Matsumoto Takeyoshi's side. Obviously, Yi-fan didn't come to attack this time. Because he didn't have a murderous aura. How about it? Yi-fan-kun, Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled and picked up the teapot on the coffee table in front of him. He poured tea into a white porcelain cup and asked Yi-fan, "What do you think?" "I can agree to your request, but there are conditions." As Yi-fan spoke, he slowly walked over to Matsumoto Takeyoshi and sat down on the futon opposite him. He looked at Matsumoto Takeyoshi expressionlessly. Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled as he placed a white porcelain cup filled with tea in front of Yi-fan. "Please speak, Yi-fan-kun. I'll only help you find the 9 cauldrons. I won't help you kill anyone," Yi-fan said calmly. "Sure." With a smile on his face, Matsumoto Takeyoshi picked up another cup from the tea tray and poured tea for himself as he spoke. "I won't let you kill for me." "But..." Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled and didn't continue. "But what?" Yi-fan asked. "It's impolite not to reciprocate. You have conditions, but I also have conditions." Matsumoto Takeyoshi put down the teapot. "What conditions?" Yi-fan frowned slightly. "In the process of finding the 9 cauldrons, you can be free, but you can't act alone." Matsumoto Takeyoshi picked up the tea and gently blew at it. "I can't act alone?" Yi-fan asked with a frown. "That's right. I'll assign someone to you," Matsumoto Takeyoshi said. "Before finding the 9 cauldrons, no matter where you go, you must be with him." "Who?" Yi-fan asked. "You'll naturally know tomorrow." Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled as he drank his tea. "Sure." Yi-fan thought for a moment before answering. "That's great. Yi-fan-kun is indeed a straightforward person. Come." Matsumoto Takeyoshi picked up his teacup. "For our smooth cooperation, let's drink tea in place of wine and have a toast." "Wait a moment," Yi-fan said. "Why? Yi-fan-kun still has conditions?" Matsumoto Takeyoshi put down his teacup and looked at Yi-fan. "When will you give me Chico's 3 souls?" Yi-fan asked. "Didn't I say it already?" Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled. "After finding the 9 cauldrons, I'll naturally give you Miss Chico's soul." "I'm afraid that won't do." Yi-fan leaned forward and narrowed his eyes. "What if you go back on your word at that time?" "Why? Yi-fan-kun, are you afraid that I'll go back on my word?" Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled. "What do you think?" Yi-fan asked as he sat up straight. "Then what do you think we should do?" Matsumoto Takeyoshi asked Yi-fan. "After finding the 3 cauldrons, you'll give me one of Chico's souls." Yi-fan stared into Matsumoto Takeyoshi's eyes and said, "After finding the 6 cauldrons, you'll give me the second one. After finding the 9 cauldrons, you'll give me the third one." "Fair and reasonable. I agree." Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled as he picked up his teacup and extended it to Yi-fan. Happy cooperation. Yi Fan picked up the tea in front of him. He didn't clink his cup with Matsumoto Takeyoshi's. Instead, he drank it in one gulp. Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled and drank his tea as well. Someone come. Matsumoto Takeyoshi placed the teacup on the coffee table and said softly. Crash. The cabin door opened and a ninja in white knelt at the door. Take our distinguished guest to rest. Matsumoto Takeyoshi looked at Yi Fan with a smile. Serve him well and don't treat him poorly. Yes. The ninja lowered his head and answered. Yi Fan smiled and got up to walk towards the cabin door. Mr. Yi, please. The ninja respectfully led Yi Fan to the stern of the ship. After Yi Fan left, the person in white said to Matsumoto Takeyoshi, Mr. Matsumoto, you're not worried about him? With Fujiwara no Chico's soul in my hands, he won't pose any threat to me. Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled. China has an idiom called, driving the tiger to devour the wolf. This Yi Fan is the tiger and my enemies are the wolves. Sir, you want to use him to deal with those people who get in your way? The person in white asked. Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled and nodded. But didn't he just say that he won't kill anyone? The person in white asked again. Chapter 338. Mr. Yi, that's where you'll be resting. On the deck at the stern of the battleship, the ninja pointed at a small boat not far from the battleship. The two ships were about 100 feet apart and were connected by a thick iron chain. One end was tied to the stern of the battleship, and the other end was tied to the bow of the small boat. Yi Fan frowned. He didn't expect Matsumoto Takeyoshi to arrange a second ship for him. Mr. Yi, come with me. The ninja flew up and jumped directly onto the iron chain. He jumped along the chain and jumped onto the small boat in the blink of an eye. Mr. Yi. After the ninja jumped onto the small boat, he waved at Yi Fan and shouted. Whoosh! Yi Fan disappeared from where he was. Then he appeared on the small boat with a whoosh. Yi. Mr. Yi, this is where you'll be resting, the ninja stammered. Ninja stammered. Ever since he was born, he had never seen such a fast movement technique. Yi Fan stood where he was and carefully looked at the ship. The ship wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Although it was much smaller than Matsumoto Takeyoshi's battleship, it was enough for one person. Yi Fan looked at the huge hole at the stern of Matsumoto Takeyoshi's battleship, then looked at the shape of the ship under his feet. He immediately understood. The shape of the small boat was exactly the same as the hole at the stern of the battleship. This was a mothership. When the battleship was in danger, the people on the ship could directly take this ship and leave safely. In other words, this ship was an escape ship. Mr. Yi, please take a rest here first. The ninja bent over and said to Yi Fan, someone will deliver your 3 meals a day. If you have any orders, feel free to knock on this iron chain. Someone will come over when the time comes. What's your name? Yi Fan asked the ninja. The ninja hesitated. Not revealing one's real name was one of the basic rules of a ninja. How should I address you? Yi Fan asked. You can call me Ishii. The ninja lowered his head and answered. All right, Ishii, Yi Fan said to the ninja. In the future, you'll be in charge of delivering food to me. I don't want to see unfamiliar faces. Do you hear me? Yes, Mr. Yi, ninja answered with his head lowered. All right, go ahead. Yi Fan waved his hand. Yes. The ninja nodded at Yi Fan. With a leap, he followed the iron chain back to the ship. This ninja spoke Chinese very fluently and understood Han Chinese etiquette very well, so Yi Fan said what he had just said to him. He didn't like strangers, especially strangers from Japan. With that in mind, Yi Fan opened the hatch and entered the main cabin. The main cabin was divided into upper, middle, and lower levels. It was very spacious and tidy. It had everything, but it was also very simple. The upper level was extremely empty. Other than a futon and a coffee table, there were almost no decorations. It was obvious that this was where Matsumoto Takeyoshi lived. The middle level had a lot of decorations. There was a dining room, an activity room, and a sleeping cabin. The lower level was filled with all kinds of supplies: fresh water, grains, dehydrated vegetables, fruits, jerky, and so on. It had everything. After Yi Fan walked around, he returned to the upper level. Xiao Zhao. Yi Fan turned his head and patted Baihu's head on his shoulder. I'm afraid we'll have to live here for a long time in the future. Zing. Baihu jumped down from Yi Fan's shoulder. This was its first time on a ship. Everything here was new to it. It's getting late. Let's sleep. Yi Fan carried Baihu and placed it on a futon. He sat cross-legged on another futon. Baihu stood up, picked up the futon with its mouth, and dragged it to Yi Fan's side. Then, it lay down next to Yi Fan. It could only sleep soundly when it was next to Yi Fan. However, at this time, Yi Fan was not in the mood to sleep. Because, in his opinion, everything could be described with the word inconceivable. A few hours ago, he was still fighting with Matsumoto Takeyoshi's subordinate. He even injured Matsumoto Takeyoshi's right-hand man, the man in green. A few hours later, he had become Matsumoto Takeyoshi's guest. He drank tea personally poured by Matsumoto Takeyoshi. Matsumoto Takeyoshi's personal lifeboat. Matsumoto Takeyoshi's ninjas nodded and bowed to him, carefully serving him. All of this seemed like a dream. However, Yi Fan knew that if he wanted to save his wife, this was the only way. Just like what Qing Chenzi told him, he had to take advantage of the situation. To save his wife, there were only two methods. The first method was to help Matsumoto Takeyoshi find the 9 cauldrons. Then, let Matsumoto Takeyoshi open the soul-gathering evil cauldron and give him his wife's 3 souls. The second method was to find the 9 cauldrons, obtain the patterns on the 9 cauldrons, and comprehend the ancient soul-returning technique. Then, he would summon his wife's 3 souls from the soul-gathering evil cauldron and return them to her body. Both methods required him to do the same thing, find the 9 cauldrons. But the world was big and he was alone. Where would he find the 9 cauldrons? Right now, there was only one person with the most hope and power to find the 9 cauldrons, Matsumoto Takeyoshi. This person controlled the power of the imperial court, had a large number of experts, and had the support of the evil god Xietian. In the future, finding the 9 cauldrons was not impossible. Now, the plan was to take advantage of Matsumoto Takeyoshi, using his wife's soul to threaten him. Then, he would use Matsumoto Takeyoshi's power to find the 9 cauldrons. This way, not only would he have the chance to gather the patterns of the 9 cauldrons and study the secret technique, he could also openly monitor Matsumoto Takeyoshi's every move. He would get the news of the 9 cauldrons as soon as possible and complete the responsibility of protecting the inscriptions on the 9 cauldrons. Only in this way could he truly eliminate all future troubles, accumulate great merit, and completely change his and his wife's bitter fate. The reason why he frowned in front of Matsumoto Takeyoshi was to make Matsumoto Takeyoshi think that he was forced to help him find the cauldrons. Chico, bless me. Yi Fan silently prayed in his heart. Bless me to find the 9 cauldrons as soon as possible, save you from your suffering, and reunite as husband and wife. Chapter 339. 6 hours later. The sky had just brightened. Whoosh! The sound of footsteps landing came from outside the cabin door. Although the sound was very soft, Yi Fan's 5 senses had already reached a superb level. He already knew who the person was before he landed. It was the ninja in white named Ishii. Yi Fan had completely memorized all of his characteristics, even though he was still masked. After the ninja landed, he didn't knock on the door as Yi Fan had expected. Other than the ninja's unique slow breathing and rhythmic heartbeat, Yi Fan couldn't hear any other movements from the ninja. It was obvious that the ninja didn't move. There were 2 possibilities. First, the ninja named Ishii was waiting for him to wake up. Second, the ninja was preparing to launch a sneak attack on him. Although the second possibility was very unlikely, it wasn't impossible. At this time, Yi Fan had been through hundreds of battles. He had to consider any possibility. Yi Fan opened his eyes, got up, and deliberately made some noise. Then, he walked down the stairs. Baihu followed behind Yi Fan lightly. Knock, knock, knock. Outside the door, Ishii clearly heard Yi Fan's voice and knocked lightly on the door. It seemed that he was overthinking, Yi Fan thought to himself. This person wasn't preparing to launch a sneak attack on him. Otherwise, why would he knock on the door? Mr. Yi, I've brought you breakfast. Eat it while it's hot. Ishii's voice came from outside the cabin. Mr. Matsumoto asked me to tell you that he invited you to a banquet at 5 in the evening. Got it, Yi Fan said. Ishii will take his leave. After a series of light footsteps, there was no movement outside the door. Whoosh! Yi Fan gently pushed open the cabin's sliding door. Whoosh! The cool sea breeze blew on Yi Fan's face, instantly lifting his spirit. On the floor outside the cabin door, a square food box in the style of Japan sat quietly. Yi Fan picked up the food box and returned to the cabin. After returning to the upper cabin, Yi Fan sat back down on the futon and opened the lid of the food box. A warm fragrance wafted into his nose. Inside the exquisite food box, there were several kinds of exquisite food. At a glance, it was obvious that they had been prepared with great care. Chinese mantou made of milk and noodles, exquisite Japanese sushi, 2 eggs, 3 side dishes, a bowl of soup, a cup of soy milk, a fruit platter, a sashimi, and a set of bowls and chopsticks. Japanese food and Chinese food were available. Yi Fan picked up the bamboo chopsticks and put a bit of each food into his mouth, chewing carefully. He wanted to check if the food was poisoned. Although with his current cultivation, no poison could hurt him, Xiao Zhao was different. She had no cultivation now, so even the slightest poison could take her life. Baihu saw through Yi Fan's thoughts and hurriedly reached out her claws to push away the wooden bowl in Yi Fan's hand. Don't worry, I am now immune to poison, so it's fine. Yi Fan patted Baihu's head. Baihu retracted her claws. After careful inspection, Yi Fan was relieved. There was no problem with the food. Are you hungry? Yi Fan said as he placed the food in the food box on the floor. Come, eat whatever you like. Baihu had not eaten much since she left Pear Blossom Palace with Yi Fan. Now that there was so much delicious food in front of her, she immediately lowered her head and prepared to eat. But when she opened her mouth to bite the fruit in the fruit plate, she suddenly stopped. Xiao Zhao, what's wrong? Baihu's reaction made Yi Fan a little puzzled. Baihu stretched out her front claws and pushed the food in front of Yi Fan. Then she took a few steps back and squatted there, quietly looking at Yi Fan. Why aren't you eating? Yi Fan asked Baihu in confusion. You don't like to eat? Baihu shook her head. Then are you not feeling well? Yi Fan began to get nervous. He thought that Xiao Zhao was sick. Baihu shook her head again. While shaking her head, she turned around and ran to the side. She picked up an apple from the fruit basket that the little Taoist boy gave her and ran back. Then she lay on the ground and pressed her claws on the apple, taking big bites. In an instant, Yi Fan understood Xiao Zhao's thoughts. She was now in her fox form, so she didn't want to eat on the same plate as Yi Fan. Yi Fan's eyes turned red. He directly reached out and hugged Baihu in his arms. Then he reached out and picked up the apple that Baihu had just chewed on. He put it in his mouth and took a bite. He chewed in big bites while looking at Baihu in his arms. He wanted to use this action to tell her that he had never despised her. Baihu raised her head and stared at Yi Fan with a pair of bright eyes. Her eyes were shining. Remember, you are my sister, Yi Fan said to Baihu in his arms as he chewed on the apple. No matter what you become, you will always be my sister. Remember? Baihu blinked and nodded. Come eat something. Yi Fan put Baihu on the ground again and pushed the food in front of Baihu. Baihu looked at Yi Fan, then lowered her head and chewed on the steamed bun. Yi Fan smiled and also grabbed a steamed bun and chewed on it. After 5 p.m., on the warship, Schwa, Yi Fan's figure appeared on the deck of Matsumoto Takayoshi's warship. At this time, the warship had been completely repaired. There was almost no trace of repair. Looking at the intact warship, Yi Fan frowned. Matsumoto Takayoshi's ninja subordinates were really efficient. In less than a day, they had completely repaired such a huge warship. If those people in the Great Ming Dynasty were half as efficient as them, the Great Ming Dynasty wouldn't have fallen to this point. Yi Fan thought to himself as he walked towards Matsumoto Takayoshi's main cabin. Outside the cabin, there were 2 masked ninjas wearing white clothes with white turbans on their heads and carrying swords on their backs, standing on either side. Yi Fan's sudden appearance shocked the 2 of them at first, then they immediately bowed and nodded to Yi Fan. Now that Yi Fan was Matsumoto Takayoshi's guest, they didn't dare to disrespect Yi Fan in the slightest. Other than the fact that they did not dare to disrespect him, they had already developed a fear of Yi Fan. The silver-haired young man in front of them had a very high cultivation base and powerful battle strength. He had left a deep impression on the 2 of them. They had personally witnessed Yi Fan beating the green-clothed man half to death with one move, then using the same move to split the indestructible Shipwuji into 2. Now, Yi Fan's name had been deeply imprinted in the ninjas' minds. Just like the white-clothed man, he was a godlike existence. The ninjas on the warship had also privately discussed who was stronger between the white-clothed man and Yi Fan. But in the end, there was only one result, and that was silence. Collective silence. They couldn't guess who would win. They couldn't even imagine what would happen if the 2 of them really fought. One of them became a Black Feathers ninja at the age of 13. He was hailed as a genius ninja, a legend of the ninja world, and one of the 2 heroes of Black Feathers, Yamada Shingo. The other was Yi Fan, who had defeated the elder of the Japanese martial arts world, Hattori Chiyo, in just 3 days of cultivation. Chapter 340. On the wall of the ninja mission room on the warship, there was a list of casualties. It recorded the names of all the ninjas who failed and died in battle. This was a tradition among the ninjas. Every time they carried out a major mission, there would be such a list. The purpose was to remember their dead comrades, turn their grief into strength, and spare no effort to complete the mission. However, the list in the cabin did not turn their grief into strength. Instead, it made them feel fear. It was a fear that came from their bones. When these ninjas set off from Japan in batches, there were more than 800 of them. All of them were top-notch ninjas, and half of them were jonins. But now, there were only about 500 of them left. The list of 327 of their companions who had red crosses on it had all died in the hands of one person. Yi Fan. Every morning when they gathered, they would face this list of casualties and pay tribute to their dead companions. Those lines of eye-catching black words were deeply imprinted in their minds. Snatching the secret artifact. Casualties. 8 all dead. Location, Mount Chinyun. Opponent, Yi Fan. Mission result, complete failure. Protecting Matsumoto Taro's wedding. Casualties, 319 all dead. Location, Zhou residence. Opponent, Yi Fan. Mission result, complete failure. Next to the list of casualties, there was a portrait of Yi Fan. It was only a few strokes, but it was very vivid. In the portrait, Yi Fan had a cold expression, and his eyes were like knives. Whoosh! When Yi Fan walked to the door of the cabin, 2 ninjas respectfully opened the door for him. From the moment they saw Yi Fan to the moment they opened the cabin door for him, the 2 ninjas never looked at Yi Fan's eyes. They were afraid of angering this killing machine. Yi Fan slowly walked into the cabin. In the cabin, a few Japanese dancers with curvaceous figures danced to the accompaniment of the famous Japanese song Dance of Spring. At this time, the 13 ninjas were sitting in 2 rows. There was an exquisite wooden table in front of each of them, but there was only a white porcelain cup on the table. Several servants were holding teapots and standing behind the experts, refilling their tea from time to time. All the experts had different expressions on their faces. Bamu Chongqing, dressed as a ninja, had no expression on his face as he drank his tea quietly. Onijiro, dressed in a black robe, had a smile on his face. He was watching the beautiful dancers with great interest. His fingers tapped on the wooden table as he immersed himself in the dance. Chinkong Iha sat there quietly with a mysterious smile on his face, occasionally taking a sip of tea. The blue-clothed man, Kaori Sato, frowned and looked displeased. Funakoshi Shinichi's expression was calm. He didn't even look at the dancing girl in front of him. Fujita Takashi and Yokoyama Yugo looked at each other across the table. The two of them looked at each other with complicated expressions. The green-eyed child did not say a word and sat there angrily. The aged Kamehameha wore a worried expression as he fell into deep thought. Mochizuki Kumi, who was ranked third among the five, had a charming smile on her face. Nagano, who was ranked third, looked at Mochizuki Kumi with a worried expression. Sakuragi Haruko, who was ranked second, had a doubtful expression and did not say a word. Akatsuki, who was dressed in a red robe, sat quietly on the futon. Her eyes were dignified as if she had something on her mind. 13 experts, 13 different expressions. Happiness, anger, sorrow, joy, worry, fear, bewilderment. The only other expression left was to remain expressionless. On the left side of Matsumoto Takeyoshi, an empty table was placed there. It looked very eye-catching. Different from the other tables, this one was much wider than the other tables. The style was also more beautiful. On the table, there was a plate of fruits, an empty cup, and a pot of tea. Obviously, this seat was prepared for Yi Fan. In order to show his respect for Yi Fan, Matsumoto Takeyoshi specially ordered people to prepare this table for Yi Fan. Of course, he did this for other purposes, not only to show his respect for Yi Fan. He wanted to use his favor for Yi Fan to stimulate these 13 experts. Who was Matsumoto Takeyoshi? He was like a fish in water in the officialdom. It was not because of luck. After decades of being an official, he had mastered the art of controlling people. He knew how to balance the various forces, and he also knew how to instigate discord. For a leader, it was not a good thing for his subordinates to be united. Since ancient times, the people who held the imperial power had never made their subordinates united. The reason was very simple. Only the struggle between the parties could highlight the importance of the imperial power. If all the subordinates were united, then there was no meaning for the imperial power to exist. If this continued, there was only one result, and that was the overthrow of the regime. In order to consolidate the power in one's hands, one had to learn how to balance the various forces. As the saying goes, solitary yang does not grow, solitary yin does not grow. The highest realm for a person in power to use people was to borrow their strength. Not only did they have to suppress the strength of their subordinates, but they also had to make their subordinates willing to risk their lives for them. In terms of cultivation, these 13 experts were all like Buffon, 1 against 10,000. But in terms of intelligence and scheming, Matsumoto Takeyoshi did not put them in his eyes. A luxurious table, a plate of fruit, a pot of tea, and a few simple things immediately made some of the people present feel resentful. What Matsumoto Takeyoshi wanted was precisely this resentment. Only when they had resentment in their hearts would they not walk together with Yi Fan. Only when they had resentment in their hearts would they compete with Yi Fan in every aspect. This way, he did not need to supervise them at all. They would naturally do their best to help him as they were eager to prove their strength. That was the reason why the blue-clothed man and the others had acted rashly without his permission. They were all arrogant and unruly, looking down on everyone else. They all wanted to show off in front of Matsumoto Takeyoshi. With Matsumoto Takayoshi's intelligence, he had long since seen through their intentions. This time, taking advantage of Yi Fan's recruitment, he wanted to add fuel to the fire. Voila! After Yi Fan entered, the cabin door closed. The 13 experts all looked at Yi Fan. In their eyes there was resentment, indifference, contempt, and fear. Yi Fan stood there quietly, looking around at the experts, his eyes cold. Chapter 341. Clap, clap, clap. After Matsumoto Takayoshi clapped his hands 3 times, the musician immediately stopped playing. A few enchanting dancers also stopped dancing and retreated to the side with their heads lowered. Ha ha ha, Yi Fan, Kuin, you're finally here. Matsumoto Takayoshi laughed as he stood up and walked straight to Yi Fan. Whoosh! Seeing Matsumoto Takayoshi stand up, the experts didn't dare to sit anymore and all stood up. Come, come, come. Yi Fan, Kuin, we're all waiting for you. After Matsumoto Takayoshi came in front of Yi Fan, he directly took Yi Fan's hand intimately and walked to his seat. Yi Fan frowned slightly. He didn't understand why Matsumoto Takayoshi would treat him so warmly. He wanted to shake off Matsumoto Takayoshi's hand, but as the saying goes, don't hit a smiling face. After all, he had already promised Matsumoto Takayoshi to help him find the cauldron. Moreover, Matsumoto Takayoshi was treating him with respect. If he embarrassed Matsumoto Takayoshi in front of so many people, he would be a little petty. Under the complicated gazes of the experts, Matsumoto Takayoshi brought Yi Fan to the luxurious empty table. Yi Fan, Kuin, please take a seat. Matsumoto Takayoshi said to Yi Fan with a smile. Yi Fan didn't stand on ceremony. He shook his robe and sat cross-legged on the futon. Baihu, who was on his shoulder, jumped into Yi Fan's arms. All the experts frowned slightly. At this moment, in the cabin, other than Yi Fan who was sitting, everyone else was standing, including Matsumoto Takayoshi. In Japan, this was already a supreme honor. Creak, creak, creak. The green-eyed boy clenched his fists so tightly that cracking sounds could be heard. He was the head of the 5 disciples under the Dongying demonic king. In terms of seniority, Matsumoto Takayoshi's adopted son, Zhouquan, had to call him eldest martial brother. After all, Zhouquan had also studied under the Ghost King. This time, in order to help Matsumoto Takayoshi, the 5 of them had gone all out, but even so, they had not received any special treatment from Matsumoto Takayoshi. Yet, this silver-haired brat who had always wanted Matsumoto Takayoshi's life had actually received such honorable treatment from Matsumoto Takayoshi. The green-eyed boy wanted to flare up, but he did not have any excuse. Among the 5 disciples, the 3rd disciple had actually failed to block Yi Fan's move. It was indeed somewhat unreasonable. He had originally wanted to show his face in front of Matsumoto Takayoshi, but in the end, not only did he not show his face, but his butt was also exposed. Serve the banquet, Matsumoto Takayoshi said as he returned to his original position and sat down again. Whoosh! Seeing Matsumoto Takayoshi take his seat, all the experts sat down in unison. Unlike the Han people's sitting method, the Japanese's sitting method was to kneel. Bend the knees and sit on the heels of both feet, crossing both feet, and the instep of one foot was pressed against the sole of the other foot. It was called sitting upright. The Han people's sitting method was to sit cross-legged and directly sit on the futon. At this moment the scene was very awkward. Yi Fan was sitting cross-legged, and a group of Japanese experts were kneeling there. At first glance it looked like they were kneeling to him. Whoosh! The cabin door opened, and 16 women in Japanese kimono holding trays walked in with small step. On the trays, wine and dishes were all prepared. The smooth and tender sashimi, the pleasing seaweed sushi, the fragrant fish bone soup, the delicately made lobster sashimi, a pot of top-grade sake, and a few appetizers made the meal look exceptionally sumptuous. They were now in the East Sea, and it could be said that there was an endless supply of seafood. The 16 Japanese women in gorgeous kimono walked briskly and neatly. The trays in their hands did not move at all. At a glance, it was obvious that they were well-trained female ninjas. After placing the trays on everyone's wooden table, the 16 women bowed to everyone and then knelt beside the experts. They picked up the wine pot on the trays and poured wine for everyone. What was surprising was that the dishes on Yi Fan's tray were slightly different from the dishes on the other tables. There was one more dish on his tray, which was braised fish. The experts did not say anything, but their hearts were as clear as a mirror. Yi Fan was a Han person, and Matsumoto Takeyoshi was worried that Yi Fan would not be used to Japanese dishes. In order to show his favor and to express his sincerity, he specially prepared this dish for Yi Fan. This banquet was the grandest one since Matsumoto Takeyoshi came to the Great Ming Dynasty. Even the banquet where the 13 experts gathered was not as grand as this one. Obviously, Matsumoto Takeyoshi was here to welcome the new member, Yi Fan. This time, the man in white did not stand behind Matsumoto Takeyoshi as usual. Instead, he sat on the right side of Matsumoto Takeyoshi. There was also an exquisite wooden table in front of him, which corresponded to the table across from Yi Fan. This time, he did not have to worry about Yi Fan hurting Matsumoto Takeyoshi for the time being. The reason was very simple. Yi Fan had already reached an agreement with Matsumoto Takeyoshi. They were now in the same camp. Everyone, Matsumoto Takeyoshi raised his wine cup and looked around at the crowd with a smile. Thanks to God's favor, today I, Matsumoto Takeyoshi, have another tiger general. It can be said that it is like a dragon getting a pearl and a tiger getting wings. To be able to get your help is really a blessing for me, Matsumoto Takeyoshi. Come, Yi Fan-kun, everyone, let's drink, Matsumoto Takeyoshi said, and drank the wine in his cup in one gulp. Everyone raised their cups to Matsumoto Takeyoshi and drank. The meaning of Matsumoto Takeyoshi's words was clear to all the experts. Getting their help was only a blessing for Matsumoto Takeyoshi, but getting Yi Fan was like a dragon getting a pearl, and a tiger getting wings. The blue-eyed boy's face turned green and white, and the wine cup in his hand made a cracking sound. Yi Fan raised his wine cup and gently raised it in the direction of Matsumoto Takeyoshi as a response. Then, he raised his neck and drank the wine in the cup. He saw Matsumoto Takeyoshi's special treatment of him. Chapter 342. The 16 women poured wine for everyone. This second cup of wine is for Yi Fan-kun. Matsumoto Takeyoshi raised his wine cup again and looked at Yi Fan with a smile. There's an old saying in the Central Plains, no discord, no concord. It's a wise saying. Today, you and I have turned enemies into friends. It's a joyous occasion that is worth celebrating. Please. After saying that, he downed the cup in one gulp. Yi Fan raised his cup to Matsumoto Takeyoshi and downed the second cup of wine. The woman behind Yi Fan bowed and filled the empty cup on Yi Fan's table again. Everyone, Matsumoto Takeyoshi put down his wine cup and looked around at everyone with a smile. There are two reasons for this banquet today. First, it's to welcome Yi Fan-kun and let you get to know each other. Second, there's a mission for you to complete, so I've set up a banquet to send you off in advance. A mission? A send-off? As soon as Matsumoto Takeyoshi said this, all the experts were immediately delighted. They had been in the Great Ming Dynasty for some time. During this period of time, Matsumoto Takeyoshi did not arrange for them to do anything. They were served with good wine and good food every day. Even so, they still felt very bored. They were all top experts in Japan and were usually elusive. Now that they had been living on this warship for more than a month, they were bored to death. Matsumoto Takeyoshi was playing a psychological tactic. He would first hold them back for a few days, and when they could not take it anymore, he would assign them a mission. This way they would get twice the result with half the effort. Mr. Matsumoto, what mission? Ching Mu Boy was the first to speak. He had been brooding over the frustration from before. Now that he heard that there was a mission, how could he not be excited? He wanted to prove his strength by completing the mission perfectly. Give them the mission, Matsumoto Takeyoshi said. As soon as Matsumoto Takeyoshi finished speaking, the Japanese woman behind the experts immediately took out an envelope and respectfully placed it on the wooden table in front of everyone. Your respective missions are inside, Matsumoto Takeyoshi said with a smile. Open it and take a look. Everyone looked at each other and opened the envelopes in front of them. Yi Fan lowered his head and glanced at the envelope in front of him. He reached out and opened it. There was only one line: stay after the banquet. I have something important to discuss with you. Yi Fan frowned and looked up at Matsumoto Takeyoshi. He did not understand what Matsumoto Takeyoshi was up to. Matsumoto Takeyoshi's expression was calm as he drank his tea with a smile on his face. Bang! 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 The letters in everyone's hands were instantly set ablaze, and in the blink of an eye, they were reduced to ashes. A faint smile appeared on the faces of the experts. It was obvious that they were very satisfied with their mission. There were only two exceptions: Akatsuki and Bamu Chongqing. Akatsuki frowned. Bamu Chongqing's expression was calm. Compared to the other experts, their expressions were somewhat out of place. Yi Fan carefully observed the expressions of the experts while secretly cursing Matsumoto Takeyoshi in his heart. This method of assigning missions was exactly the same as the one he had given to his beloved wife. Other than Matsumoto Takeyoshi and himself, no one else knew about it. Everyone, this is the third cup of wine. I wish you all success and a triumphant return, Matsumoto Takeyoshi said to the experts as he raised his cup and stood up from his seat. Whoosh! The experts all stood up with wine cups in their hands and faced Matsumoto Takeyoshi. Seeing this, Yi Fan could only raise his cup and stand up. Cheers! Matsumoto Takeyoshi said loudly. Thank you, sir, the experts said in unison. Everyone drained their cups. Ha ha ha, come, let's sing and dance. Matsumoto Takeyoshi laughed loudly. It was obvious that he was very happy. The sound of the strings sounded again, and the dancers started to dance again. Everyone, feel free to speak freely. Don't be shy, Matsumoto Takeyoshi said loudly to the experts. The experts smiled and nodded to Matsumoto Takeyoshi. They returned to their seats and drank by themselves. The business was finished, and the rest was to eat and have fun. With the light music, the atmosphere of the banquet suddenly became relaxed. The experts enjoyed the song and dance while drinking with each other. The 13 experts, who were still worried about their own matters, seemed to be in a good mood after reading their respective missions. They all smiled. Even the green-eyed child who was full of resentment was beaming at this time. The blue-robed man, Sato Kawakara, who had been worried, was even happier. He drank with the others while looking at the beautiful dancers who were swaying their waists. What mission did Matsumoto Takeyoshi give them to make them so happy? Yi Fan, who was sitting in his seat, couldn't figure it out. Although he was puzzled, his face was calm and indifferent. The man in white sitting in front of him didn't eat anything except for drinking. Because he was wearing a veil, every time he drank, he had to cover it with his long sleeve. He raised his cup and raised it to Yi Fan, who was sitting opposite him. At this time, he made a toast. Yi Fan smiled. He raised his wine cup and gestured to the man in white as well. Heroes cherished heroes. Both of them were experts among experts. Naturally, they had a sense of appreciation for each other. Both of them drank the wine in their cup. Matsumoto Takeyoshi, who was sitting in the main seat, looked at the experts who kept toasting with each other with a smile while drinking by himself. He looked confident. Yi Fan's joining made him very happy. His stumbling block suddenly became his right-hand man. Anyone would be happy. There were two ways to deal with a powerful enemy. One way was to eliminate them completely, which was the worst way. The other way was to use them for oneself, which was the best way. The flowers planted with the intention did not bloom, but the willow unintentionally grew into a shade. These two lines of a poem appeared in Matsumoto Takeyoshi's mind. Originally, his countermeasure was the first one, kill. However, there were a few times when he almost succeeded, but Yi Fan managed to escape death. Not only that, every time Yi Fan escaped death, he would be like a phoenix that was reborn from the ashes. The more he fought, the stronger he became. Not only did he not kill Yi Fan, but he also lost many experts. Hattori Chixio, his adopted son Zhou Quan, Inchan Dashyong, the blue-robed man, and more than 300 elite ninjas. Chapter 343. The reason was very simple. All three powers were involved with Yi Fan. Yi Fan was a member of the Yi clan, so the experts of the Yi clan would naturally not make an enemy out of Yi Fan. Pear Blossom Palace's Jinchan had a close relationship with Yi Fan, so she would naturally not make an enemy out of Yi Fan. As for Purple Sun Monastery, it was needless to say. Monastery Master Qing Chenzi and Yi Fan's father, Yi Kong, were best friends, so it was even more impossible for them to make an enemy out of Yi Fan. With this person, Pear Blossom Palace, Yi Clan, and Purple Sun Monastery, these three powers would collapse without a need to attack. Ha ha ha! When Matsumoto Takeyoshi thought of this, he could not help but laugh out loud. Looking at the proud Matsumoto Takeyoshi, Yi Fan felt very uncomfortable. His beloved wife's father's murderer was right in front of him, and his beloved wife's soul was in this person's hands. Now, not only did he not avenge his beloved wife, he had even become an honored guest of his enemy. This made him feel very uncomfortable. However, he knew clearly that this was the only thing he could do now, and he had to do this. In order to save his beloved wife's soul, he had to endure now. In order to live a peaceful life with his beloved wife in the future, he had to endure even more. However, enduring was like a knife above the word endure. It was easy to say but extremely difficult to do. Yi Fan, Kun, let me offer you a toast. Just as Yi Fan was deep in thought, Onijiro, who was dressed in a black robe and had a handsome face, came to Yi Fan's side. He held a wine pot in his left hand and a wine cup in his right as he directly sat down next to Yi Fan. Yi Fan collected his thoughts and turned to look at Onijiro. This person looked to be in his 20s. He had delicate features, red lips, and white teeth. He looked extremely scholarly, but even so, Yi Fan did not look down on him. From the aura this person was emitting, this person's cultivation was extremely high, not below that of the green-clothed man. My name is Onijiro. Nice to meet you, Onijiro said as he bowed to Yi Fan. This isn't the first time we've met. It should be the third time, Mr. Onijiro, Yi Fan said calmly to Onijiro. He wasn't wrong. When he killed Inchan Dashyong, it was the first time he met Onijiro. After Yi Fan obtained the evil cauldron and returned here, it was the second time they met. Now it was the third time they met. Ha ha ha! Onijiro was stunned when he heard Yi Fan's words. Then, he laughed. Yi Fan, Kun is right. This is the third time we've met. It's my fault. I'll drink 3 cups as punishment. Onijiro said and drank 3 cups of wine in a row. Yi Fan, Kun's cultivation is really eye-opening. I really admire you. Onijiro said to Yi Fan while pouring wine into his cup. I'll toast to Yi Fan, Kun. Since Onijiro said so, Yi Fan couldn't refuse. He raised his cup and clinked it with Onijiro's. The two of them downed the cup in one gulp. Yi Fan, Kun's Baihu is so cute. It's really lovable. Onijiro looked at Baihu in Yi Fan's arms. He smiled and reached out to pet Baihu. Woo! Baihu bared its teeth and looked at Onijiro fiercely as it retreated. Puh! Yi Fan grabbed Onijiro's wrist with one hand. Onijiro frowned and looked at Yi Fan with a puzzled expression. He touched Baihu as a friendly action and didn't have any bad intentions. He didn't understand why Yi Fan would stop him. "She's my sister," Yi Fan said calmly to Onijiro. "Other than me, no other man is allowed to touch her." After saying this, Yi Fan let go of Onijiro's hand. "Sister, sister?" Onijiro couldn't believe his ears. No matter how he looked at it, this white fox was just an ordinary fox. How could it be his sister? Could it be? Onijiro guessed the reason. This Baihu was definitely not as simple as she looked. I'm sorry. Onijiro nodded and apologized to Yi Fan. "Don't blame me for not knowing," Yi Fan said to Onijiro. He was now Matsumoto Takayoshi's VIP. He couldn't fall out with these experts. After all, one more friend meant one less enemy. Opposing these people wouldn't do him any good in finding the 9 cauldrons. Having said that, this Onijiro took the initiative to drink with him. He should take this opportunity to get closer to this person. This way, he might be able to get some useful information from this person. "Mr. Onijiro," Yi Fan took the wine jug from the maid behind him and poured wine into his cup while saying to Onijiro, "This little brother is new here. There are some things that I need your guidance on. This cup of wine is a toast to you." His words were watertight, and there was a deeper meaning behind them. Onijiro was very smart. After hearing this, he immediately understood. Even a fool could see that the reason why Yi Fan agreed to help Matsumoto Takayoshi was because Matsumoto Takayoshi had Fujiwara no Chico's 3 true souls. When Yi Fan said that he would give him a lot of pointers, he was actually testing Mr. Kimuro's attitude. "Yi Fan, Kun is too polite." Onijiro smiled as he poured wine for himself. "You and I are about the same age. We have a lot to talk about. Naturally, we should interact more in the future. What do you say, Yi Fan, Kun?" Onijiro's reply also had layers of meaning. "That would naturally be for the best." Yi Fan smiled and raised his wine cup. Please. Onijiro replied. "Pa." The 2 cups clinked. The 2 looked at each other and smiled before drinking. Chapter 344. "Mr. Yagi," Onijiro said to Bamu Chongqing as he got up from his seat. Seeing that Kimi Lang had stood up, Yi Fan felt that it was inappropriate for him to continue sitting there. Bamu Chongqing nodded to Onijiro, then looked at Yi Fan. The master in front of him looked to be in his 30s, with a handsome face and a pair of eagle eyes. Yi Fan remembered this person. Among the 13 masters, he was the first one to stop him, and his saber chi was extremely strong. "Yi Fan, Kun, Mr. Yagi, take your time," Onijiro said to the 2 with a smile. "My wine pot is empty, I'll go get some wine first." After that, he gave Yi Fan a meaningful look, then turned and left. "Yi Fan, Kun, do you still remember me?" Bamu Chongqing asked Yi Fan calmly. "Of course I remember," Yi Fan replied. "My name is Bamu Chongqing. If Yi Fan, Kun wants to find me for revenge in the future, you can find me in my cabin. I will be waiting for you there." Bamu Chongqing went straight to the point. After listening to Bamu Chongqing's words, Yi Fan frowned slightly. This person's words were like his saber technique, quick in and out, simple and direct, without any hesitation. Yi Fan understood that this person's move was completely different from the others. He could see that this person attacked to protect Matsumoto Takayoshi, while the others attacked to claim credit. Their actions were the same, but their goals were very different. "This cup of wine is for Yi Fan Kun." Bamu Chongqing gently raised the wine cup in his hand. "I hope Yi Fan Kun will achieve his wish soon." After that, he directly drank it. Yi Fan frowned even more. Yagi Long Kiwa emphasized the words, "Get what you want." It was obvious that Yagi Zhongqing was talking about his wife's soul. After drinking the wine, Bamu Chongqing nodded slightly to Yi Fan and turned to leave. Mr. Yagi, please wait. Just as Bamu Chongqing turned around, Yi Fan stopped him. Bamu Chongqing, dressed in a white ninja uniform, turned around. Yi Fan, Kuan, you don't want to fight here, do you? Bamu Chongqing said with a frown. Mr. Yagi, you think too much, Yi Fan said to Bamu Chongqing. As the saying goes, a gentleman is harmonious but different, a villain is harmonious but not harmonious. Although Yi Fan is stupid, he can still distinguish who is a gentleman and who is a villain. Yi Fan's meaning was obvious. He, Bamu Chongqing, was not a villain, but a gentleman. Bamu Chongqing frowned and quietly looked at the young man in front of him. Yi Fan's words surprised him. He thought that in Yi Fan's heart, he was the same kind of person as the blue-clothed man, Sato Kawakai and Ching Mu Boy. When Matsumoto Takeyoshi scolded them with a sullen face, he didn't give any explanation. It was very simple. Those who understood him didn't need to explain, and those who didn't understand him didn't need to. He didn't expect that the young man in front of him could see the clues at a glance. Mr. Yagi and I are really friends, Yi Fan said as he took the wine pot from the maid behind him. While pouring wine for Bamu Chongqing, he said, Mr. Yagi, this cup of wine is for you. Bamu Chongqing frowned and quietly watched Yi Fan pour wine for him. Mr. Yagi, I'll drink first to show my respect. Yi Fan then filled his cup to the brim and drank it all in one gulp. Yi Fan was speaking the truth to Bamu Chongqing. Although Bamu Chongqing was loyal to Matsumoto Takeyoshi, he was still a magnanimous gentleman. Yi Fan didn't hate people who were in a different position from him. What he hated was villains, despicable villains. Bamu Chongqing's eyebrows relaxed. He smiled and drank the wine in the cup. After drinking the wine, the two looked at each other and smiled, dismissing their previous enmity. Did I miss anything? Onijiro smiled and came to the two again. You missed a good show, Bamu Chongqing said to Onijiro with a smile. Oh? What's the good show? Onijiro asked with a smile. Harmony. Yi Fan smiled. Ha ha ha, it's really a good show. Onijiro smiled and poured wine for Bamu Chongqing and Yi Fan. For this good show, I suggest we drink a cup. How about it? This suggestion sounds good. Yi Fan smiled and looked at Bamu Chongqing. Yagi Zhongqing smiled and raised his wine glass. The three people clinked their cups and drank. On the seat next to them, Chinkong Iha smiled and drank by himself. As he drank, he glanced at Yi Fan. Yi Fan's five senses were amazing. While he was chatting with Onijiro and Bamu Chongqing, he also looked at Chinkong Iha inadvertently. When their eyes met, Chinkong Iha raised his cup to Yi Fan. Yi Fan smiled and raised his cup as a response. When he was observing the experts just now, he already saw that this person was different. This person didn't have a shadow. In other words, he might not be human at all. Among the 13 experts, this person's cultivation could definitely be ranked in the top 3. His name is Chinkong Iha. He's ranked 5th among the 5 children of Japan. Just as Yi Fan retracted his gaze from Chinkong Iha, Onijiro's voice suddenly rang in his mind. Yi Fan was shocked. Why was Onijiro's voice in his mind? He immediately looked up at Onijiro. Onijiro was looking at him with a smile. Be natural. Don't let others see through you. Onijiro's voice rang in Yi Fan's mind again. What a brilliant method! Yi Fan was shocked. Onijiro actually had such a special ability. He could use telekinesis to communicate with others. Chapter 345. Come, Mr. Yagi, I'll go with you to toast Mr. Matsumoto, Onijiro said as he took Bamu Chongqing's hand and walked towards Matsumoto Takeyoshi, slightly drunk. Before leaving, he looked back at Yi Fan meaningfully. This Chinkong Iha is very scheming, and his cultivation is unfathomable. You have to be careful of him. Onijiro's voice continued to sound in Yi Fan's mind. In the process of conveying the message to Yi Fan, Onijiro was still talking with Bamu Chongqing. This person can actually do two things at once. Why should I believe you? Yi Fan was shocked and immediately asked Onijiro with his mind. Bamu Chongqing is a trustworthy person. You can interact with him more. Onijiro's voice continued to sound. Obviously, Anamuki Lang didn't hear the voice he sent out with his mind. It seemed that Onijiro could only transmit his voice into the other person's mind, but couldn't hear the other person's reply. Yi Fan thought as he returned to his seat and quietly drank his wine. Baihu on the futon saw Yi Fan sit down, and jumped into Yi Fan's arms again. It anxiously pushed Yi Fan's hand with its front paw, and then turned to look at Onijiro, who was walking towards Matsumoto Takeyoshi. Yi Fan frowned. Baihu's action seemed to be expressing something to him. What was it trying to say? Was it warning him? Was it telling him to be careful of Onijiro? Or did it not like this person? Yi Fan couldn't understand. You have to be careful of the blue-robed Sato Kawakara. Onijiro's voice sounded in Yi Fan's mind again. He seems to be particularly hostile to you. The man in blue? His name is Kaori Sato? As Yi Fan thought to himself, he continued to drink while observing the man in blue through the dancers who kept swaying their hip. At this time, the man in blue was holding a wine cup in his hand and looking at the scantily clad dancer with a lecherous look. When Yi Fan's gaze fell on him, the blue-clothed man clearly felt that someone was observing him. He glanced at Yi Fan and immediately retracted his gaze. He pretended as if nothing had happened and continued to enjoy the song and dance. Just as Onijiro finished speaking, Baihu, who was in his arms, once again played with Yi Fan. Then, she turned her head to look at Onijiro. Yi Fan immediately understood what Baihu meant. Onijiro's voice could be heard by Xiao Zhao. Yi Fan, who was sitting on the futon, bent over and lowered his head. He stroked Baihu with his hand as he moved his mouth close to Baihu's ear and asked softly, "You can hear him?" Baihu, who was in his arms, nodded gently. As expected, Yi Fan thought to himself, that old man's name is Kamehameha. He's a veteran of the Japanese martial arts world. Not only is his 5 elements spell unfathomable, but his swordsmanship is superb. The man in the loose gray kimono and rattan shoes is called Fujita Takashi. His swordsmanship is outstanding, and he's good at Chimen Duanjia. He was born with yin-yang eyes. Onijiro introduced the other masters to Yi Fan as he drank with Matsumoto Takeyoshi, who was grinning from ear to ear. Yi Fan drank silently while listening to Onijiro's explanation. With his explanation, Yi Fan roughly understood the situation of the masters. Here, he saw with his own eyes the 5 masters of Japan that Xiao Zhao had told him about. It was just as Xiao Zhao had said. Chinkong Iha was indeed not simple. The banquet lasted for 4 hours. After 4 hours, the crowd gradually dispersed. Only 4 people were left in the spacious cabin. The slightly drunk Matsumoto Takeyoshi, the calm man in white, the slightly frowning Yi Fan, and the veiled Akatsuki. Akatsuki slowly walked to Matsumoto Takeyoshi, lowered her head, and spoke first. "Mr. Matsumoto, what's my mission?" Her voice was mellow and ethereal, extremely pleasing to the ear. Yi Fan immediately understood Matsumoto Takeyoshi's intention. When he had negotiated with Matsumoto Takeyoshi had agreed that Yi Fan could act freely, but he had to act with one of the 13 masters. Now, it seemed that this person was none other than Akatsuki, who was skilled in ninjutsu and swordsmanship. "Miss Yu, your mission is very simple." Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled at Akatsuki. "Tomorrow you and Yi Fan Kun will set off for Pengcheng Sisui." "Pengcheng Sisui? With him?" Akatsuki, who was dressed in red, asked Matsumoto Takeyoshi as she turned to look at Yi Fan. "That's right," Matsumoto Takeyoshi said. I've received a secret report that the Imperial Court has sent a large number of Taoist masters to Sisui to search for the cauldron. Tomorrow night they will use the Taoist secret technique, the Thousand Ghost Formation, to search for the cauldron. The two of you will go and check it out tomorrow. Remember, regardless of the outcome, do not interfere in this matter. Search for the cauldron? Thousand Ghost Formation? Yifan's eyes lit up when he heard this news. Matsumoto Takeyoshi was indeed well informed. He had news of the 9 cauldrons so quickly. Sir, I can complete this matter alone. I don't need anyone else's help. Akatsuki lowered her head and said, Before Miss Yu came, did your master instruct you? Matsumoto Takeyoshi picked up his teacup and sipped his tea as he asked Akatsuki. Yes, Akatsuki replied. My master told me to listen to Mr. Matsumoto's arrangements. That's it. Matsumoto Takeyoshi put down his teacup. You will go with Yifan-kun. This is your mission. Yes. Akatsuki frowned and replied in a low voice. Also, in all future operations, you will be together with Yifan-kun, Matsumoto Takeyoshi continued. From now on, the two of you will be partners. Yifan-kun will be the leader, and you will be the assistant. You will cooperate with Yifan-kun in all aspects and successfully complete the mission. This. Akatsuki heard Matsumoto Takeyoshi's words and immediately raised her head with a difficult expression. Matsumoto Takeyoshi's face sank. Yes, Mr. Matsumoto. Akatsuki lowered her head again. You can leave. Matsumoto Takeyoshi said to Akatsuki. Yes. Akatsuki nodded to Matsumoto Takeyoshi and turned to leave. The moment she turned around, she glanced at Yifan with her beautiful eyes. Yifan was expressionless and didn't even look at Akatsuki. Chapter 346. After Akatsuki left, Matsumoto Takeyoshi asked Yifan with a smile, What do you think, Yifan-kun? Are you satisfied with the partner I arranged for you? She's a woman, so it's inconvenient to bring her along. Yifan said to Matsumoto Takeyoshi. Although he didn't care who he partnered with, he had to be picky. This way, he would appear more authentic and Matsumoto Takeyoshi wouldn't suspect him. You're wrong, Yifan-kun, Matsumoto Takeyoshi said with a smile. Although Miss Yu is a woman, her cultivation is extremely high. She will only help you and won't cause you any trouble. Since Mr. Matsumoto said so, then I have nothing to say. Yifan said. This is your first mission, so I'll give you 3 days. Matsumoto Takeyoshi said to Yifan with a smile. After 3 days, I'll be here waiting for good news from Yifan-kun. Okay. Yifan replied. During these 3 days when you're gone, I'll make Chiko-san's soul feel better. I won't let her suffer. You can rest assured. Matsumoto Takeyoshi said with a smile. Mr. Matsumoto is considerate. Yifan narrowed his eyes at Matsumoto Takeyoshi and said slowly. Matsumoto Takeyoshi was very clear in his heart. On the surface, he was saying that he would make his beloved wife's soul feel better, but in fact, he was reminding Yifan not to play any tricks. Otherwise, Fujiwara no Chiko's soul would suffer. Yifan-kun, I wish you success in this mission. Matsumoto Takeyoshi said to Yifan with a smile. Thank you for your kind words, Yifan said as he turned to leave. Mr. Matsumoto, why did you arrange for Akatsuki to be with him? The man in white asked Matsumoto Takeyoshi. When it comes to judging a person's cultivation level, Mister's eyes are like a torch. No one can compare to you. But when it comes to reading a woman's mind, you're not as good as me. Matsumoto Takeyoshi smiled as he took a sip of the fragrant tea. What do you mean, sir? The man in white asked. This Akatsuki has already developed feelings for Yifan. Could it be that sir can't tell? The slightly tipsy Matsumoto Takeyoshi held a teacup in his hand as he smiled at the white-clothed man. Feelings? Hearing Matsumoto Takayoshi's words, the white-clothed man frowned as he suddenly understood. When Yi Fan had landed on the warship, 12 of the 13 experts had protected Matsumoto Takayoshi. Only Akatsuki had stood in place, motionless. Akatsuki sympathized with Yi Fan's situation, so she didn't make a move at that time. Matsumoto Takayoshi seemed to have seen through the white-clothed man's thoughts. "That's just sympathy," the white-clothed man said. "Why did Sir say that she has feelings for Yi Fan? I won't hide it from Sir. At first, I also thought that she only sympathized with Yi Fan." Matsumoto Takayoshi smiled and said, "But just now she revealed her feelings." "Just now?" The white-clothed man was puzzled. "That's right." Matsumoto Takayoshi continued to drink his tea. "She just told me that she wanted to act alone and didn't want to travel with Yi Fan. This explains the problem." "What's the problem?" the white-clothed man asked. "If she really has feelings for Yi Fan, she should have accepted it gladly. Why would she refuse?" "Ha ha ha, sir, you don't understand." Matsumoto Takayoshi laughed loudly. "A woman's refusal often doesn't mean what she says. Not only is Yi Fan's cultivation high, he's also handsome and talented. He's also an infatuated man. Which woman in the world doesn't like him? Akatsuki has only met him a few times. Why would she refuse to travel with him? Does she hate him? If she really hates him, why didn't she make a move against Yi Fan? It's obvious that she already has feelings for Yi Fan. But because Yi Fan already has a wife, she instinctively wants to control herself and spend as little time with Yi Fan as possible. Because she likes him, she refuses." The white-clothed man frowned. Matsumoto Takayoshi was right. He didn't understand a single thing about women. "Sir hasn't touched a woman yet, right?" Matsumoto Takayoshi said as he walked in front of the white-clothed man. He looked into the white-clothed man's eyes with a wicked smile. "How about I arrange a woman for Sir tonight? At that time, Sir will understand that when a woman says don't, it's actually the opposite." "Sir is joking," the white-clothed man said. "Ha ha ha ha." Matsumoto Takayoshi threw his head back and laughed. "Since Sir knows that Akatsuki already has feelings for Yi Fan, why did you arrange for her to travel with Yi Fan? Aren't you afraid that she will stand on Yi Fan's side?" the white-clothed man asked. "What I want is for her to stand on Yi Fan's side," Matsumoto Takayoshi said with a smile. "Sir may not know, but this Akatsuki is said to be a peerless beauty. The reason I arranged for them to be together is to let the two of them develop feelings for each other. Using feelings to tie Yi Fan down is much better than threatening him. Don't you think so?" Matsumoto Takayoshi said as he looked at the white-clothed man with a smile. The white-clothed man frowned at first, then nodded. Chapter 347. By the time Yi Fan returned to his ship, it was already late at night. At this time, he missed his wife very much and was not in the mood to sleep, so he flew to the top of the ship with Baihu. In Yikong, the stars shone brightly and Mingyu hung high in the sky. The surface of the sea was sparkling and the waves rippled. The sea and the sky were one color, nothing more beautiful could be imagined. Yi Fan held a pot of sake in his hand and sat on the top of the ship. He quietly looked up at Mingyu in the sky and took a sip from time to time. Baihu was lying beside Yi Fan, looking at the sea in front of her in a daze. A man and a fox listened to the sound of the waves, thousands of thoughts running through their minds. Mingyu is born in the sea, and we share this moment in the world. Lovers complain about the distant night, and they miss each other at night. The candlelight is extinguished, and I feel the dew in my clothes. Unable to bear the gifts of my hands, I still have a good dream. The beautiful scenery in front of him made Yi Fan involuntarily recite Zhang Jiuling's, gazing at the moon and Huiyuan. Since he was young, his favorite thing to do was to look at the moon. He liked the crescent moon and the full moon. Every time he was upset, He would quietly climb up to the roof at night and lie comfortably on the roof, quietly admiring the moonlight. The bright moonlight would make his heart feel calm, and the thick darkness of the night would make him feel free. The two complemented each other, making Yi Fan intoxicated. After being together with Fujiwara no Chiko, every full moon night, the two of them would enjoy the moonlight in the gazing at the moon pavilion on Fengming Mountain, while drinking wine and tea. At that time there was a beauty by his side, good wine in his hand, a paradise, and a bright moon in the sky. It could be said that they were like immortals, but now Mingyu was still the same and they were separated. Yi Fan raised his head and began to gulp down the wine from the jug. After drinking, Yi Fan casually threw the empty wine pot into the sea. He got up and carried Baihu, flying back to the cabin. He still had serious business to do tomorrow, so he had to rest well. After using spirit energy to cover the entire room with a barrier, Yi Fan hit his sleeping acupoint and then lay heavily on the wooden floor, snoring. Since killing Incheon Daxiong, he had not had a good sleep. If it were not for his strong willpower and strong spiritual power, he would have collapsed long ago. When the white fox saw that Yi Fan had fallen asleep, it immediately used its mouth to pull out a blanket from the closet and covered Yi Fan with it. At this moment, it was the only one could understand his pain. The next morning, the sky was still dark. Patter, patter. The white fox licked Yi Fan's face. Yi Fan sat up sleepily. "Mr. Yi, breakfast," Ishii said. "Coming," Yi Fan answered as he got up and went downstairs. "Voila." Yi Fan opened the cabin door. Ishii stood outside the door with a lunchbox in his hand. Not far away, the exposed land was already in sight. After a night of sailing, the warship was already close to land. "Mr. Yi, please enjoy." Ishii handed the lunchbox to Yi Fan. "Is Akatsuki up yet?" Yi Fan asked Ishii after taking the lunchbox. "Miss Yu is already ready. She's only waiting for you, Mr. Yi," Ishii bowed and answered. Yi Fan was stunned when he heard that. He didn't expect Akatsuki to wake up earlier than him. It wasn't even dawn yet. "Tell her that I'll be right there," Yi Fan said to Ishii. "Yes," Ishii said as he nodded at Yi Fan. Then, he flew away. "Xiao Zhao, quick," Yi Fan said to Baihu as he picked up the lunchbox and quickly walked into the cabin. After a while, Yi Fan brought Baihu out of the cabin and flew towards the warship. On the deck of the warship, the red-robed Akatsuki was already waiting there. She carried a red battle saber on her back, and her face was covered with a red veil. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and she looked valiant in her martial attire. The moment Yi Fan soared into the air, her gaze was fixed on Yi Fan. When Yi Fan looked at her, she quickly shifted her gaze elsewhere. Akatsuki's beautiful eyes suddenly reminded Yi Fan of his beloved wife, Fujiwara no Chiko. This was the first time he had seen Akatsuki's eyes since coming to the East China Sea. Akatsuki's beautiful eyes were full of hope and spirit. They were almost identical to his wife's eyes. Perhaps it was because he missed his wife too much. Yi Fan persuaded himself as he slowly landed. "Sorry to keep Miss Yu waiting." Yi Fan was the first to speak to Akatsuki after landing. After all, he was late. His words could be considered an apology. "Mr. Yi, you're too polite," Akatsuki said calmly to Yi Fan. "Mr. Matsumoto said that you're the master and I'm the assistant. It's only right for me to wait for Mr. Yi." Akatsuki's words were polite and flawless. Not only did she express her intentions, but she also emphasized the relationship between the two of them. This sentence left Yi Fan speechless. "What about the others?" Yi Fan changed the topic and asked. "They've all set off," Akatsuki replied. "Then we should also set off," Yi Fan said. "Okay." Akatsuki nodded. Yi Fan turned around and tapped the deck with the tip of his foot. He used his movement technique and flew toward the opposite shore not far away. Akatsuki followed closely behind. With a leap, a red shadow instantly shot into the air and flew side by side with Yi Fan. This was the unique movement technique that Shangu Kyoichi had taught her, falling leaves, flying flowers. With sufficient true qi, she could fly more than 10 miles in the air. In Dongying, such a movement technique was already rare. As the sea breeze blew, Yi Fan's white robe and silver hair fluttered in the wind. He looked like a true immortal descending to the mortal world. As for Yu Hongji, she was holding a saber. Her red robe and long hair fluttered in the wind. She looked like a fairy descending to the mortal world. The two of them were a man and a woman, one white and one red, one black and one silver, one with a blade and one with a sword. It was only a few miles from the warship to the opposite shore. The two of them used less than 10 minutes to land on the ground. At this time, the sky was already bright. Smoke began to rise from the fishing boats by the sea. Chapter 348. There were no clouds in the sky, and it was daytime. He couldn't fly in the clouds as he usually did. That would disturb the people and cause unnecessary trouble. Now that he was Matsumoto Takayoshi's guest of honor, he didn't want this news to spread to Jianghu. The eldest grandson of the Yi family, Yi Fan, helped Matsumoto Takayoshi of Dongying to find the cauldron and take over the Ming dynasty. Once this news spread to Jianghu, not only would the Yi family's 1,000-year reputation be ruined, but those righteous people with high cultivation would also hunt him down. He only wanted to save the soul of his beloved wife, and didn't want to cause trouble. Now he had to keep a low profile, and couldn't be as willful as before. "What are you looking at?" Akatsuki, who was dressed in a red robe, saw Yi Fan looking at the sky and frowning. She didn't know what he was doing. "I'm looking at whether there are clouds in the sky," Yi Fan replied. "Clouds?" Akatsuki frowned. She didn't understand what the clouds in the sky had to do with their mission. She felt more and more strange about the person in front of her. He was young, but he had silver hair. No matter where he went, he took Baihu with him. They were inseparable. The way he spoke was strange, and she couldn't understand what he meant. "Let's go," Yi Fan said as he walked forward. They had plenty of time. They just needed to reach Sisui before the sun set. Akatsuki and Yi Fan walked side by side. "Are we going to walk like this?" Akatsuki asked Yi Fan. "It's daytime now. It's too risky to use body movements," Yi Fan replied as he walked. "I'll rent a carriage later. We'll take it." "How far is it from here to Sisui?" Akatsuki asked. "More than 1,000 miles, Yi Fan replied. "Do you think a carriage can travel 1,000 miles in a day?" Akatsuki asked. "You don't have to worry about that. I know what I'm doing," Yi Fan replied calmly. Akatsuki glanced at Yi Fan with her beautiful eyes and didn't say anything. Matsumoto Takayoshi had told her that for this mission, Yi Fan would be in charge, and she would be his assistant. She would do whatever Yi Fan said. The two of them did not speak along the way. An hour later, the two of them arrived at a small town. The small town was not big, but it was very lively. At this time, the sun was already high in the sky, and people were coming and going on the street. Yi Fan stopped in front of a stall selling masks. "How much is this mask?" Yi Fan picked up a mask hanging on the stall and asked the old man. Akatsuki frowned again. This strange person was acting up again. Instead of carrying out the mission, he was actually looking at masks. "Mister, this mask hasn't been painted yet. Take a look at the other mask." The old man pointed at the other masks hanging on the shelf behind him and said, 6 copper coins for 1, 10 copper coins for 2. "I'll take this," Yi Fan said as he put on the white mask that had not been painted yet. Then he took out a gold leaf from his chest and put it in the old man's hand. He turned around and prepared to leave. Mister. The old man called out to Yi Fan from behind. Yi Fan turned around. "Mister, this mask is not worth much. I really can't accept your gold leaf." The old man embarrassedly handed the gold leaf in his hand to Yi Fan and said, "I'll give the mask to you, mister." You should take the money back. Yi Fan frowned. He had bought so many things, and all the sellers he met were greedy by nature. It was the first time he met someone who was not greedy for money. Old man, you should accept it, Yi Fan said to the old man. Your mask is worth so much money. Good people always have good karma. This had always been Yi Fan's idea. Although he no longer believed in this sentence, he still hoped that this sentence would come true for the old man in front of him. After Yi Fan finished speaking, he was ready to leave again. Mister, please stay, the old man said as he took an extremely exquisite beauty mask from the mask shelf and handed it to Yi Fan. This mask is the best one I have. I'll give it to your wife as a token of my appreciation. After the old man finished speaking, he looked at Akatsuki, who was standing behind Yi Fan, with a smile. After hearing this sentence, Akatsuki's face turned red. I'm not. Akatsuki was anxious to explain to the old man. Thank you, old man. Yi Fan interrupted Akatsuki's words. As he spoke, he put the beauty mask into his pocket and turned to leave. He wanted to give this mask to his wife, Fujiwara no Chiko, and not to Akatsuki. Akatsuki was unable to explain herself. Her face was red as she followed behind Yi Fan. With the mask, he could walk on the street without worry. He no longer had to worry about people recognizing him. The two stopped in front of a carriage shop. This carriage shop was not small. There were 7 or 8 different kinds of carriages parked in front of the door. Do you have money? Yi Fan turned his head and asked Akatsuki. Money? Akatsuki frowned and asked, Don't you have money? Just a moment ago, Yi Fan casually took out a piece of gold leaf. She did not understand why Yi Fan wanted to ask her for money. That is my money, not the money for the mission, Yi Fan calmly said to Akatsuki. For this trip, did Matsumoto Takeyoshi not give you money? He gave it. Akatsuki replied. How much? Yi Fan continued to ask. 500 taels. Akatsuki replied. Give it to me. Yi Fan stretched out his hand. Akatsuki looked at Yi Fan. Then she took out 2 silver ingots and a banknote. She handed them over to Yi Fan. You wait here. I'll go rent a carriage, Yi Fan said. He stepped into the carriage shop. Akatsuki stood in the same place. She quietly looked at Yi Fan's back. Her eyebrows were tightly knitted together. The gold leaf that Yi Fan gave the old man was worth at least 50 taels of silver. But renting a carriage would not even cost 5 taels of silver. This is a kind man. He is also a man with principles, Akatsuki thought in her heart. Chapter 349. After a while, Yi Fan, wearing a white mask, walked out of the carriage shop, followed by a man dressed as a coachman. Get in, Yi Fan said as he walked past Akatsuki and headed straight for a luxuriously decorated carriage. He was spending Matsumoto Takeyoshi's money, so he naturally had to choose a comfortable seat. Akatsuki turned around and followed Yi Fan into the spacious carriage. Hiya! The coachman yelled as he whipped the carriage. Rumble, 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 rumble. The carriage steadily drove out of the town. Inside the carriage, Yi Fan took off the ever-flame sword from his back and stood to the side, not saying a word. Akatsuki also took off her saber and placed it by her side, not saying a word. The white fox, on the other hand, was lying next to Yi Fan and did not move at all. The atmosphere was somewhat heavy. This scene made Yi Fan's thoughts fly back to the time when he had saved his beloved wife. The scene back then was the same as now, sitting in a carriage and also traveling a long distance. And at that time, Fujiwara no Chiko was similar to Akatsuki, also carrying a saber and wearing a veil. The scene back then was still vivid in his mind, but Yi Fan's heart still ached. When he thought of his beloved wife in a sea of suffering, her soul in 2 different places, separated by yin and yang, his eyes reddened again, and his heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife. Things remain the same, but people have changed. Tears flow from his eyes. Drip. 2 drops of hot tears drip down from the white mask. Akatsuki frowned. This man is crying. Without a doubt, he must be thinking of his wife. Akatsuki thought to herself. We have plenty of time for this mission. After we find out the news tonight, you should go and see your wife. Akatsuki broke the silence and said calmly. After hearing this, the white-masked Yi-Fan turned to look at Akatsuki. This sentence made him feel slightly surprised. Akatsuki looked straight ahead and did not look at Yi-Fan. She didn't want to see Yi-Fan's eyes after he cried. As for why, she didn't know either. Thank you, but no need, Yi-Fan replied with 4 words. He also wanted to return to Pear Blossom Palace to see his wife, whom he yearned for day and night, but he could not. He could not let anyone else know that he was working for Matsumoto Takeyoshi, let alone his grandfather, Yi-Yun, and Jin-chan. If he returned to Pear Blossom Palace and saw the 2 of them, what would he say? Tell the truth? On the surface, he was working for Matsumoto Takeyoshi, but in fact, he wanted to collect the 9 tripod cauldrons to save Chico, protect the inscription, and accumulate merits? No. Qingqinzi had only said a few words to him, and he had already incurred the wrath of heaven. His lifespan had been shortened by 3 years, and his hair had turned white. If he revealed the secrets of heaven, Qingqinzi's life would not be as simple as just being shortened. Not saying? No way. Jin-chan and his grandfather were very smart. They would be able to guess most of it. At that time, he would not be able to defend himself, and he would not be able to explain it clearly. Betraying the country and relying on the enemy was something that the Yi family would never allow to happen. Even if he was the eldest son of his grandfather, he would not be able to do anything at that time. He would definitely be expelled from the Yi family, and his ancestral records would be cut off. If things went wrong, he would be executed according to the family rules and become a cripple. It was not right to say or not to say. The best way was not to go, so that they would not be able to find him. Yi-Fan's answer puzzled Akatsuki. She really wanted to know why, but she could not open her mouth to ask. The atmosphere became quiet again, and only the sound of the carriage's wheels could be heard. The 2 of them did not speak along the way. Yi-Fan leaned against the window and looked outside quietly. Yu Hongji, on the other hand, was sitting there with her eyes closed. 4 hours later, the carriage stopped. Young master, there is an inn in front. Do you want to rest and eat something? Coachman's voice came from outside. Yi-Fan replied. Let's get off the carriage. Yi-Fan said to Akatsuki as he picked up his sword and got off the carriage. Akatsuki also got off the carriage. It was already close to noon. After 3 hours of bumpy ride, they had already traveled more than 300 miles. Looking at the white clouds floating in the sky, Yi-Fan sent away Coachman. Are we not going to take the carriage? Akatsuki asked as she looked at the carriage that was going back the way they came. No need, we will take the cloud path in the afternoon. Yi-Fan said as he walked towards the inn. Cloud path. Akatsuki, who was standing in the same place, was dumbfounded. She finally understood why Yi-Fan looked up at the clouds in the sky. This person could actually fly in the clouds. Akatsuki was completely shocked by Yi-Fan's cultivation. Yi-Fan's ability to fly through the air during the battle with the experts on the warship had already broadened her horizons. However, she did not expect Yi-Fan to be able to control the clouds as well. She had read many ancient books from the Han Dynasty to Japan. She had also read about some of the techniques of riding the clouds, but she always thought that those were exaggerated descriptions that were imagined by the ancient people. Now that she heard Yi-Fan say this, she realized that such techniques actually existed in reality. The techniques of the Central Plains were indeed as extensive and profound as the rumors said. Chapter 350. After asking for a room with a table of food and wine, the 2 of them went to the guest room on the 3rd floor. After the two of them entered the room, Yi Fan placed the Everflame sword on the table and said to Akatsuki, "We will rest here in the afternoon. We will leave in the evening." "Okay." Akatsuki nodded. The sumptuous food and wine were quickly brought up. "The food and wine are ready. Please enjoy," the waiter said and turned to leave. "Wait a moment." Yi Fan called out to the waiter. "Does Sir have any other orders?" The waiter turned around and asked Yi Fan. "Without our permission, do not disturb us. Do you hear me?" Yi Fan said as he took out a silver ingot from his bosom and slightly exerted force with his fingers. Crack! The silver ingot in his hand broke into 3 pieces. "Yes, yes, yes." The waiter was so frightened by Yi Fan's move that he began to stutter. Just how much strength was needed to break such a large ingot in half? The waiter thought in his heart. "You can leave." Yi Fan threw a piece of the ingot to the waiter. Thank you, sir." The waiter received the silver ingot and thanked him profusely before leaving. Yi Fan walked to the door and closed it. He turned around and slowly walked to Akatsuki. His eyes stared at her, sizing her up. "You, what are you doing?" Akatsuki saw Yi Fan suddenly looking at her up and down. She immediately stood up and said nervously. This Yi Fan first told the waiter not to disturb them, then closed the door. Finally, he stood in front of her and stared at her body. What was he doing? Akatsuki suddenly became nervous. "Take off your clothes." Yi Fan looked at Akatsuki and spat out 3 words. What? Take off my clothes? Akatsuki's face turned red and her tongue began to knot. As she spoke, she took a step back, ready to draw her sword at any moment. Baihu, who was on Yi Fan's shoulder, immediately widened her eyes and turned to look at Yi Fan with a puzzled expression. "Take off your red robe and pass it to me through the crack in the door. I have a use for it," Yi Fan said as he looked away from Akatsuki and turned to walk towards the door. "You!" Akatsuki regained her senses and released her katana. She blushed and asked Yi Fan, "What do you want my clothes for?" "Just do as I say," Yi Fan said as he walked out of the door. With a flip of his hand, he closed the door from the outside. Akatsuki was speechless. Yi Fan was the master and she was the assistant. She had to listen to Yi Fan. Looking at Yi Fan's back through the paper window, Akatsuki turned around and began to take off her clothes with a red face. After a series of rustling sounds, Akatsuki, who was wearing white underwear, came to the door. She opened the wooden door a little and leaned out to hand her red robe to Yi Fan. "Eat something here first and lock the door. Don't go anywhere before I come back." Yi Fan took Akatsuki's red robe and directly left. When will you come back?" Akatsuki asked Yi Fan through the door. "At most 2 hours." Yi Fan's voice became more and more distant. Akatsuki locked the door and leaned her body against the door. She bit her lower lip as her heart skipped a beat like there was a little rabbit in it. Ever since she became sensible, this was the first time she took off her clothes for a man. "What does he want my red robe for?" Akatsuki, whose face was hot, did not understand. When Yi Fan had approached her just now, she had strangely felt her breathing quicken. She, who was inexperienced, still did not understand what had happened to her just now. That feeling was very strange. "Who?" Akatsuki took a few deep breaths and patted her chest. Outside the inn, Yi Fan carried the red robe that still had Akatsuki's body temperature and walked directly into a clothing store. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Yi Fan walked out of the clothing store and the red robe was no longer in his hands. He found a nearby tavern and asked for a private room. He ordered a table of dishes and then took off his mask and wolfed down the food with Baihu. The two of them left in a hurry in the morning and did not eat much. Half an hour later, Yi Fan, who was full of wine and food, brought Baihu back to the clothing store. When he left the store, in addition to Akatsuki's red robe, he also had an extra bundle in his hands. In the inn, Akatsuki was leaning against the headboard in a daze. Her mind was filled with the image of Yi Fan coming close to her, and she could not get rid of it. Knock, knock, knock. The sound of knocking came from the door. Who is it? Akatsuki gathered her thoughts and quickly sat up on the bed and asked alertly. It's me. Yifan's voice came from the door. Open the door and I'll return the clothes to you. He came back. Akatsuki came to the door and opened it a little. The red robe was handed in. Akatsuki took the red robe and closed the door again. After putting on the clothes and putting on the veil, Akatsuki opened the door. Yifan walked in. There are 2 new sets of clothes here. I just asked someone to make them. You and I will each have 1 set. When we leave, change into it. Yifan put the sword and bundle in his hands on the table and sat down on a chair. Clothes. Akatsuki turned around after closing the door and asked in confusion, What clothes? We are going to walk on the cloud road. Your clothes are too eye-catching. You can't wear them anymore. Yifan picked up the teapot on the table and poured himself a cup of tea. I asked someone to make a new set for you. It was true that he could fly in the clouds, but he could not ride the clouds. Akatsuki's red robe would be clearly seen by people on the ground. Matsumoto Takeyoshi said that the 2 of them were partners. In the future, they would have to carry out missions together. In order to make things easier in the future, Yifan asked someone to make a set of white robes that were exactly the same as Akatsuki's red robes. New clothes? For me? Akatsuki's voice was filled with surprise. It's in the bundle. Open it and take a look. Yifan said as he drank the tea. Akatsuki frowned and came to the table. She reached out and opened the bundle. Inside the bundle, a white robe was lying quietly. There was also a white veil on it. The white robe was exactly the same as her red robe. It was completely made of the highest quality silk. It was extremely beautiful, even more beautiful than her red robe. It was obvious that Yifan had asked her for the red robe so that he could make new clothes for her. Chapter 351. Ever since he was young, other than his master, no one of the opposite sex had ever bought clothes for him, let alone such high-quality clothes. What's wrong? Not satisfied? Yifan saw Akatsuki frown and asked. No. Akatsuki pretended to be calm and replied. That's good. Yifan continued to drink his tea. This one is. Akatsuki found that other than the white robe that Yifan had made for her, there was another white robe in the bag. It was completely different from the one she was wearing. This white robe was very wide and was a man's style. She picked up the wide white robe and turned to look at Yifan. That one is mine. Yifan put the teacup on the table and said quietly. Taking advantage of the opportunity to make clothes for Akatsuki, he asked the tailor to make a set of Japanese white robes for himself according to the Japanese style. He also added a very wide white hat on the collar of the white robe. His current identity was special and he had to keep a low profile. However, with his silver hair and the nimble baihu on his shoulder, these 2 characteristics would attract people's attention no matter where he went. However, with this set of Japanese white robes, these problems were easily solved. The white robe was very wide and the fire sword was hanging inside. It was impossible to see it from the outside. The wide hat was specially designed with a 1-foot-long secret pocket at the back of the neck. This hat could not only cover his silver hair, it could also allow Baihu to hide in the secret pocket. It could shelter Baihu from the wind and rain, and it could also hide his figure. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Looking at this set of men's clothes in front of her, the smart Akatsuki immediately guessed Yifan's intentions. At this time, his identity was very special. He was neither friend nor foe. It was very awkward. The uncolored mask, the Japanese-style white robe, the wide hat, these were all things to hide his identity. When are we leaving? Akatsuki asked Yifan as she put away her clothes. We'll leave in 2 hours, Yifan said. You should drink as much wine as you can in these 2 hours. Drink? Akatsuki asked Yifan in confusion. The cloud path is not like the land path. Yi Fan took a small jar of wine from the table and looked at it. Above the clouds, it is unusually cold. If you don't drink to warm yourself up, you won't be able to stand it. After saying this, he placed the wine jar in front of Akatsuki. Yu Hongji frowned after hearing this. Although she had never walked the cloud path, she still understood that it was lonely at the top. The distance between the clouds and the ground was at least several thousand feet. The temperature was so high that even a drop of water would turn into ice. Coupled with the high speed of flight, one would not be able to withstand it without a strong inner force. Yi Fan asked her to drink to keep her warm. From Akatsuki's point of view, Yi Fan was concerned about her. Bang! Akatsuki hesitated for a moment, then reached out and picked up the jar of green bamboo leaf. She opened the wine seal, then covered her face with her long sleeve and began to drink from the jar. Yi Fan quietly watched Akatsuki drink without saying a word. The jar of wine was quickly emptied and Akatsuki's forehead began to redden. Her beautiful eyes were blurred with drunkenness. Her alcohol tolerance was not high. 1 jin of green bamboo leaf was her limit. Have you eaten? Akatsuki, who was already drunk, asked Yi Fan. I left some food and wine for you. I've already eaten. Yi Fan answered without raising his head. He did not know why, but when he saw Akatsuki's eyes, he thought of his wife. Their eyes were too similar. Akatsuki said as she opened another jar of wine on the table. Yi Fan frowned. He stretched out his hand and the jar of wine on the table flew into his hand. You've drunk enough. You can't drink anymore. Yi Fan said. Is this okay? Akatsuki said as she looked at Yi Fan with her beautiful eyes. Her face was red and her eyes were straight. It's okay. Yi Fan answered. Okay. Akatsuki answered. The two were silent again. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. Do you think it's troublesome to bring me along? After a long time, Akatsuki asked Yi Fan. This question stunned Yi Fan, who did not know how to answer. Is that so? Seeing Yi Fan not speaking, Akatsuki looked up at Yi Fan with a burning gaze. Why are you asking this? Yi Fan avoided Akatsuki's gaze and asked. You answer me first. Akatsuki stared at Yi Fan and said. No. Yi Fan calmly answered. He knew he was lying, but he had to say it because the other party was a woman. You were crying in the carriage. Did you miss your wife? Akatsuki, under the influence of alcohol, asked the question she had always wanted to ask. Miss you, you drank too much. Yi Fan stared at Akatsuki and coldly said, The questions you asked have nothing to do with our mission. I don't need to answer you. Seeing Akatsuki's endless questions, Yi Fan deliberately pulled a long face. Only in this way could he stop Akatsuki's questions. Only in this way could he keep his distance from her. Akatsuki bit her lower lip and did not reply. You rest first. Yi Fan slowly stood up. I'll wait for you downstairs in 2 hours. After saying that, Yi Fan picked up the flaming sword on the table, picked up the Japanese white robe on the table, and turned around to leave. Bam! The sound of the door slamming shut came from behind Akatsuki. With the sound of the door closing, Akatsuki once again felt Yi Fan's coldness. Phew! After leaving the inn, Yi Fan let out a long breath. Akatsuki's gaze made him feel very uncomfortable. She needed to be alone for a while, and he also needed to be alone for a while. Yi Fan thought as he came to the main street. At this time, he was wearing a Japanese white robe, a mask on his face, and a wide hat that hung down to his forehead. Even if he stood in front of Yi Yun now, Yi Yun might not be able to recognize him. Bai Hu, on the other hand, had already felt sleepy after eating and drinking. It crawled into Yi Fan's hat and fell asleep, even snoring softly. It was obvious that it liked Yi Fan's hat very much. It was safe and private inside, and it could also stay close to Yi Fan. Once it went in, it did not want to come out. With the Japanese white robe and mask as cover, Yi Fan was at ease and boldly strolled around the street. Ever since he awoke his beloved wife's soul, he had been as tense as a string and had never relaxed. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.